Awesome.
I'm here with Tyler Franklin.
Nice to be
man?
here. It's great to be here, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heard you're having a podcast. I was like,
I'm giving it a try.
right. I mean, I'm a big fan of podcasts of any kind, so just
Yeah.
being on one is it's great.
You were saying you listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
For the last couple weeks, it's been I listened to some of the Rogan Report, listened to Car Talk, some of that on I think it's like How It's Made or something.
Oh yeah. Are you a big car guy?
I don't know if I'd say big, but I mean,
Yeah. I'm not a car person at all. So.
I mean, like, I am to an
So
extent.
if you're into cars, then you're definitely probably gonna know more than me. So
I mean, to some extent, I'm in there where I go to like car shows every Friday, but not like
oh, okay.
I if I have to.
Well, I know you're buddies with Ian, and I know
Yeah.
Ian's big into cars.
Yeah. He's
I've seen the
yeah.
I've seen the car that he drives around town.
The
so-
Eagle. He had the Eagle. He had a 1973 Vega. That thing was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got some crazy. I mean, I don't know. I guess for me, car enthusiasts, like I get it, but I don't get it too. For me, a car really just represents something to get you from point A to point B. And the look of it. I mean, I guess the look of it matters in that. Okay, so when I was in high school, I got a hand-me-down. My first car was a hand-me-down station wagon.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, it was cool. It was great to have a car to drive, but I was a little bit embarrassed in front of my friends to have a red station wagon.
I don't know, man. I would love one
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
nowadays, yeah.
It depends on how you look at it, I guess. But for me, it was like that was the only time that a car and the way that the car actually looked really mattered to me. And then like after that, I mean, I guess I was just kind of like, as long as it gets me from point A to point B, the look of the car. Like I've heard people, they've said things to me like I had an ex-girlfriend once. She said, "You look really good driving that," and I didn't
Really?
I didn't really comprehend what that even means. Like, I think she was trying to convince me to buy a truck. And she was telling me that I would look really good driving a truck.
I've heard that, yeah. I've heard that
And
kind
like that doesn't even like I don't know, it just doesn't compute in my brain. But I can understand it, I guess. Like I can understand why people drive sports cars and nice looking cars.
For me, it's not. I know for some people, it's how it looks. It's not as much for that. It's about like, look, when I don't want to say too much on the we're recording, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to say too much, but I like drifting a lot. Like so I want my car to be rear wheel drive.
Okay.
I want stick shift, and I want 8 cylinders.
Yeah.
So something like that. My Ford Taurus is like the most embarrassing vehicle in the world to me because it's front wheel drive, 6 cylinders, and
Yeah. Drifting, man, that's a somewhat new phenomenon, it seems like.
I'm not doing anything too crazy, but I mean, during the summer I'll drive 5-6 hours a day, and I don't have a job to drive to. I'm just driving around, the whole day.
Huh. So, what's the legality on drifting? Is that like, is there a sport around here where they actually do it at a track?
Not really. It's more of, I'm mostly just enjoy, if you're on the roads, the back roads of where I live, there's not really that many cops. I'm not being reckless,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
as long as you know what you're doing, you give
Yeah.
it a little bit of gas,
So do you, so when there's snow on the ground and you can go into a parking lot, is that the best time for drifting, or are you more of like a dirt track type?
I enjoy when it's just dry out, because if your car's fast enough and you shift it into a low enough gear,
Yeah.
then you're gonna be that sound is just great.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like something, a lot of car guys are into is just the rumble of the engine and that.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of new. I mean, I've only been into cars. Really into cars for like 3 years. Before that, it was just, it's a car. I don't know what
Yeah.
kind of happened to me at some point. I started caring about this.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's some of your buddies being car guys too.
That's probably it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like I can understand it, but at the same time, just not something that has ever really grabbed a hold of me
Right.
personally.
Oh yeah, I completely get that.
Yeah. So Tyler, you are probably the biggest celebrity I know.
Oh, thank you, thank you, Mark.
Now, for anybody that doesn't know, you have a very successful YouTube channel.
Thank you, Mark.
Is it okay to say the channel?
It is.
Knowledge Hub.
Yes, it is a I'm gonna call it edutainment channel.
Okay.
But it's not. I don't know how to describe it. I almost take a humorous approach to it because I don't really like the kind of education content that's out there right now. In a lot of ways, it's very serious and a lot of times it seems like it's trying to feed people's ego in a lot of ways of like, oh, I feel like I'm learning so much, I'm smarter than everybody else. But for me, I want to take a topic that I find interesting and just make something out of it,
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the channel at this point.
Yeah, I was. I've checked out a few of the videos. I was just actually listening to a few of them today, but it seems like you're kind of going with. Is a lot of it history knowledge that you're working on, or is it just general knowledge?
At this point, it's closer to history. I've kind of shifted the focus of the channel a bit in the last couple weeks. It used to be like geopolitical, like history, stuff about nation states and wars, and I'm not really that much into that kind of stuff, but I knew that most of the audience was.
Oh, okay.
But YouTube started demonetizing that kind of content, anything that
Right.
could be deemed controversial in any capacity. So I decided if I'm not going to make money off of that, I should just do whatever I want. So like this last video was about the American Mafia. And I mean, the video, I didn't do a very serious, in-depth anything history. I just did almost a humorous look at it. The next video is about like the history of fast food in America, like concepts
Okay.
that aren't geopolitical or too serious, and that's kind of the shift right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So with that channel, I noticed they all. Is it? Well, let's go back to the demonetization thing with YouTube. Is that you said that it's based on if it's anything offensive? What are they? I noticed there's been a lot of people that have been kind of up in arms about that because it seems like they may be right leaning, left leaning.
We honestly have a hard time determining. There is a huge perception that it was a left leaning versus the right leaning, because I wouldn't call my channel right leaning, but my channel is definitely I don't have a political agenda attached to it, and there's some concept that there may be if any content features guns, it will get demonetized. But in reality, it seems like it could be anything that an advertiser could view as something they don't want to associate with their product. So that's to say, even if you had a super far left channel, you would still get demonetized. But if you're I would say if you're a right-leaning channel on a political level, you're probably getting demonetized instantaneously because of kind of the culture surrounding YouTube and that Southern California vibe,
Yeah, yeah. That seems like if they're kind of I don't know. It seems like they would need a very strict guideline as to what is deemed offensive and what isn't.
They've really
That may be kind of a gray area right now.
That's the thing, is it's almost impossible to predict. I mean, because users can just say something is offensive. I think I had a video about Nikola Tesla, and I said he was born in modern-day Serbia, and there is like a gigantic argument from people in Serbia about whether he was born in modern-day Serbia or Croatia or something like that. And so that video got demonetized because of that one fact. And
Yeah.
when it comes to stuff like that, it's kind of hard to say, I don't even know how that could be deemed offensive, if it's just a fact. But if
Yeah.
YouTube takes away the money at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think. I just lost all that money.
Right. Yeah, so with the demonetization, do you think that really I know that a lot of YouTube channels, most of their money is coming from sponsors rather than the monetization that comes through YouTube, but it is still
We're a bit odd. In terms of YouTube, I really wasn't aware of this until rather recently. But in the grand spectrum of YouTube, I have about I don't know how many subscribers. I think it's like 540 or 560,000.
yeah,
But
which is enormous.
well,
by the way,
to be honest, I didn't know that until very recently, and weeks ago. I was kind of under this assumption that it was a pretty middle of the road ground, but almost all of my money comes from advertisers, because even if a sponsor pays, they might pay $2,500 or $5,000. That's still at most going to be maybe half of my income for the month, or if it's 2,500, it's like maybe a third or a fourth or a fifth of the income. All the rest of it's just going to be advertisers and all those old videos.
so the monetization of your videos is
Yeah.
where the bulk of it's coming from still?
Yeah, almost all of it at this point.
Oh, okay. So you don't run like new advertisements on, I guess, your old videos. That makes sense because they're already locked in.
Well, we have there's still like,
you just have like a set fee for when the video comes out to have an advertisement on it.
well, YouTube kind of handles all that in the sense
Oh,
that
okay.
if it's deemed it can have an advertisement, it'll always have advertisements. So I'm still making money off of stuff I made 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And that's why it kind of begins to pile up.
'cause
But
it's monetized.
yeah, if
right.
that video gets demonetized, the algorithm determines don't send this video out to recommended lists. Maybe don't send it out to subscribers. Like,
Yeah.
they really try to shut that down if you don't have a video
Yeah.
that's monetized.
Yeah, I know. There's actually been channels that they've just demonetized the entire channel too. Like I think Jordan Peterson was one of them. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I'm not.
Well, he's a very he's an interesting guy, and actually he's a professor in Canada. But he's got some really, I think he's got some really smart ideas and a really great articulate way of expressing his ideas. But a lot of people would say some of his leanings are very right.
Yeah,
And-
YouTube's pretty particular about that right now. Well,
Yeah.
they've been, and we don't really. At some point, we thought there would be an easy way to do anything we want to talk about and not be limited by YouTube determining, this fact is right leaning, or
Right.
So
Well, you would think that the internet would be a place where freedom would exist.
you would think, yes, but YouTube is. I don't like, since I make all my money from them, I sometimes hate ripping on YouTube, but
Yeah.
I've had too many videos get demonetized for just pointless reasons.
Yeah.
Just talking about war, because war is violent and you
Yeah.
can't.
It seems to be a pretty big issue. But I guess defending YouTube, though, it seems like they are a private company.
Right.
And they are, although you would like them to be completely neutral and allow complete freedom for whatever content they want, because I feel like that's where the internet is at its best, where you can put out anything you
Right.
want. But you can kind of see from their standpoint where there's definitely videos that they need to block and take down immediately, things with curses or
Right.
some of the crazy ISIS videos that pop
Right.
up and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So there is a reason to control it, but it's just a question of how tight should it be controlled and who should have a say in that.
Right. I think in my mind, I think the free market does have a lot to help to kind of counteract that, because in the sense, if YouTube tries to censor people or demonetizes videos for a political ideology, say they don't agree with, that isn't like, some extremist or violent mentality, the free market will say that's wrong. We want this sort of content, and they'll donate via Patreon to get that content, which is the great thing about Patreon, which sometimes YouTube tries to limit that, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's a weird system.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems kind of confusing, but a lot of it I think is just the algorithms that they use, and Facebook's kind of the same way with their algorithms. Is a lot of the advertisers and stuff. It's always a game of let's figure out the next
Yeah.
update of the algorithm and how
Right.
it's changed. So
I really hate a lot of that. I really hate, like, even involvement in my channel. I don't really care much for the trying to, like, have the biggest appeal on my videos. I don't care to. The only thing I'll do is if there's like a World War II video, I just won't do that anymore because I can't talk about World War II. No matter what, it's going to get blocked. You say the word Nazi, you're getting blocked.
so Nazi is one of the hot button words.
Well, like, even just discussing the Germans in World War II in any capacity, which is pretty hard when, that means you can talk about maybe Japan and, the Pacific Front, but you're not really going to get any clicks in the first place unless you talk about, United States versus Nazi Germany. That's the big thing people want to see, and it's kind of taboo according to YouTube now.
Yeah, that's a bummer. But do you think what do you think's on the horizon? Do you think they'll be able to? Do you think this is just? I mean, I think sometimes people have an overreaction on one side as a counter to something that's happened, and it seems like with a lot of the political turmoil right now, there
Right.
seems to be a lot of. So maybe they're feeling the pressure of the public to
I don't know.
demonetize these things.
Honestly, I feel like this is I don't want to make it too political, but I feel like it really is this conflict between the coasts and Central America. And I think they, especially with the, that culture within California, I think that they truly believe this is the correct way to handle everything. Anybody that disagrees with us is, let's put a label on them, and they'll be.
What culture are you referring to, Tyler? The
I think
blonde girls on the beach culture?
I think every. I don't want to.
I think Hollywood has a very liberal. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they've even said, a lot of actors kind of get boxed into not being able to express their true feelings because
Yeah.
they'll get blackballed in Hollywood if they don't have liberal viewpoints.
And that's sort of this. I always see it as a very. I'm not talking about liberalism itself. I'm talking about the Hollywood, that mentality. It's all about egotism. It's about we are good people. We may make millions of dollars, but we're good people. We want to give to the public. But in reality, they don't. They most definitively don't. These people are, for the most part, very self-centered. They because they've lived that lifestyle. There's no way they're going to be able to relate to the average person, more or less care. It's all
Yeah.
just good PR,
Well, and I think depending on how big this, if you're talking about celebrities and how big the celebrity is, I think there's always a certain amount of narcissism that has to
Yeah.
come along with being a celebrity in the first place. Just to think that that's a path that you want to go down in life.
I want to be a celebrity. I want to
Yeah.
be. I mean,
Well, there's automatically that feeling of a little bit of like I'm special.
I'm better than everybody else.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that. I've been to Hollywood. I've been to Hollywood twice, and I don't like California, honestly.
Crowded. I can say
Crowded.
that.
I think the regulations there, in terms of like, I'm legitimately scared when I go there that at some point they'll be like, let's ban gas powered cars. I always have that feeling, they're gonna do something crazy like that. And I've seen legislation when they tried to say leave the union. There was that movement to leave the union, and it was points that were just so half-assed, so just such a lack of understanding of their position within the United States. And I don't know, I don't like California that much. Not saying I hate you people from California, I'm just saying the governing system of California.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in California about a year and a half ago, and that was one of the big things that I took away from it was just like the amount of people in that
Yeah.
small area.
Yeah.
It's so I guess we kind of take it for granted here in the Midwest how easy it is to just get in your car and drive to the store.
I mean, yeah,
When you're
like I
when
didn't.
you're in Los Angeles and you want to get anywhere and you need to get into a car,
It just
man, it's
it
hard to get
blew
around.
my mind because I think I was in LA only, no, I was in LA twice, but realizing it took 40 minutes to get from LAX to Hollywood going 60 miles an hour. I was like, that's the distance from Defiance to, I don't know, like White House, Ohio. Not that any of you know where that is.
Yeah.
But knowing that's that the entire span of Northwest Ohio is this one city is horrifying.
Yeah.
And all these people are here. And when we landed in Detroit, we're like, wow, this is a lot. There's a lot less people here. This is great, and
Yeah.
it's Detroit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like I kind of feel like not landlocked, but almost like you can't move. It's almost
Yeah.
like you're in a sludge of
Oh yeah,
people.
yeah.
That it's really difficult to move. But
I gotta say, part of me did like. I've never had access to instant gratification like that, where if I want to go to Starbucks, it's right there. If I want to go to Subway, it's right there.
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting, but I'm sure it skews your entire perception of life. And also the fact that I couldn't drive drove me just fucking crazy.
oh yeah,
Can I cuss in this?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
no problem. Yeah, I know what you're saying. The other thing that was weird and I, by the way, really liked California and Los Angeles. I was in San Diego, Los Angeles.
Yeah, I went to San
And,
Diego as well. I
actually
like that a
drove-
lot more.
I actually flew into Vegas and drove from
Really?
Vegas. So
That sounds great.
yeah, plane tickets are cheap to Vegas because everybody wants, the casinos and everybody wants you out there to gamble.
Yeah.
So flying into LAX was, twice as expensive as flying into Vegas. And
Really?
It's a 3-hour drive if you rent a car. So
Oh yeah. I
That
should have
was
done
kind
that.
of,
Yeah.
and it was a fun road trip driving through the desert for sure.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that this year. Just not even flying out, just buy it. Cause look, I don't want to get too much into cars again. I feel like that's such a constant thing. But I have 3 cars right now. Okay, I got my Ford Taurus, which I hate. I don't know if you have you ever seen my Jeep.
I don't think so.
It looks like total shit because I spray painted it brown, and I spray painted it white, and then I sanded it, and then I spray painted the doors brown. So it looks like blood, shit, and semen driving down. Everyone like in Delta, it's the only place in the world that I've ever gotten compliments for that vehicle, but
So, with the spray paint, did you have an idea of what you were doing, or were you just kind of guessing?
I
winging
did
it?
actually have an idea.
You do have some experience painting cars?
No, I don't. I did it like I do music, which is I have an idea, and over time I lose my direction, and it becomes just a horrible mess. And I think my original plan was I had that band called Future Rust or whatever on my SoundCloud. That was
Yeah.
just the whole plan for the car. I didn't really have a name for the band. I just called it that because I painted it on that day.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna get these LED headlights, and the Jeep itself was gonna look like just complete shit. But I'm not good at painting, and I spent probably $1,000 on. My concept was I was gonna build a wooden top for the Jeep.
Interesting.
I'm not good at building with wood either.
Was this, have you seen this, or was this just
No,
something you came
again,
up with?
this was just in my head. I was like, I'm gonna go to Menards today. I'm gonna spend $1,000 and do this to the Jeep that I
There
didn't
you
spend that
go.
much money on.
And it sounds like I can just picture you and Ian sitting around coming up with these ideas.
Yeah, it's pretty consistent. It's
Yeah.
hours. Then I bought a Lexus LS 400, which is when it came out as a 100 grand car. Now it's only 5 grand. But it's 8 cylinders. It's rear wheel drive. It's got 300 horsepower, and I'm like, that's perfect.
That's your drifter.
But I broke it.
Oh no.
Instantly. Yeah, just without
Well,
going.
if it was originally 100 grand and it was only a 5 grand car, was that the mileage on it? Is it pretty
No,
old?
it's just nobody really, since nobody really wants a, like when you think of Lexus nowadays, you don't think of top of the line luxury like you used to, you know. Now people think BMW or they think Mercedes, but Lexus is like, oh, it's just another Japanese car company. They don't think luxury Toyota.
Yeah.
But when you get, I just wanted a rear wheel drive car, and I was like, you know, an 8 cylinder Japanese engine. That's huge in my brain. But no, I broke that thing really easily. So I'm gonna probably just get a Mustang now
Yeah.
because I don't want to break my next car again.
What do you think of? Since we were talking about California, what do you think of the Tesla out there? Uh-oh. Not a fan?
I don't. I like Elon.
I've heard if you get in that car and take off and it
Right.
0 to 60 in what, 2 seconds or something?
Well,
it's super fast.
there's-
It's quiet though. That's
There's
the
a lot
thing.
of I'm not the sound I don't care about as much, but my issue is Tesla seems to be they're kind of fudging the numbers a little bit. They'll there's different the 0 to 60 time is going to be great, and it is great because an electric engine has instant torque at 0 RPMs. You're right there. That's cool, but they started lying about the pound feet of torque and doing like not lying but doing weird marketing
Messing
shit.
with the numbers a little.
Yeah, like to try to make it sound a little bit better than it is. And I've just never been that big of a fan of Tesla because I don't like technology in cars. If your car has 4G LTE, in my mind, it's not a car. It's a phone that you can drive.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people disagree
Oh, man.
with that, but
my new car has got this infotainment center
Ugh.
that is awful.
I hate those.
Like if I want to change the radio station, I don't actually listen to the radio that much, so I can't say that I know how to do it. But there's like a couple of different screens I gotta touch.
Yeah.
and like it's ridiculous. Instead
And-
of just turning a knob once or pushing a quick button, what happened
It's-
to the?
It's because
Simplicity.
it makes people think, we're advancing, but I think the best dashboard I've ever seen was, again, the Chevy Vega, because the Chevy Vega, to be fair, that didn't have a radio, because it was like the basic model, but when you have as less as you can possibly have in that car, that's all I want, because it's about driving. It's not about, hey, here's a touch screen, here's all this fancy shit you can do.
Yeah,
I hate that. That's why I don't like Teslas, because
Yeah.
they have like a giant screen right here, and
I think the self-driving part of the Tesla though, that technology is gonna be the future for sure.
I think I've had discussions with Ian for about months on this.
Yeah.
I think right now it really works well in California, but out here I just have to think like in the middle of winter when we have snow, that snow can't cover up any of those cameras. You couldn't have. Is it going to be able to react as well if there's ice, if there's haze, if there's fog, if there's rain? We
Yeah.
have deer all around. That's my big fear. And
Yeah, I think it's just one of those technology things that's just going to have to keep growing, and all those little problems we're going to have to keep solving. But it's weird because when you have that discussion, if you're talking to a car guy,
they get
don't
pissed.
they don't want to
get
hear
so
it
pissed
because
yeah.
they want to be able to drive. But when
Yeah.
you talk about when you say, okay, and I don't know the exact numbers or even guesses. I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. But let's say 100,000 people die in a car accident.
Right.
And if you do the electric, 3 people are going to die in a car accident. Like that.
Right. I mean,
But the problem the problem for me is this. If I have a car that's driving me and I happen to be that 1 in 3 of like the one chance, and this car somehow slams into a tree and
Yeah.
and I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Like obviously you would be dead, but I'd be
there's
pissed.
a lot of interesting stuff about that in the sense of somebody that say is born today could realistically never drive a car in their life, just have this car drive them forever.
Yeah.
So to them it's not even a foreign concept. It's like, how we talk about, well, you get in a bus, and a bus driver is in control. You get in a plane and the pilot's in control. To them it'll just be natural. But like for me, obviously, I will always have this inner resentment because it's everything that when I was younger, I loved the concept when I didn't care about cars. But now I'm like,
Yeah.
I try to see every single flaw, even though before
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, it saved so many lives.
Have you seen the videos where they swerve at the Tesla and like the weird stuff that happens?
Yeah.
If a regular car. That's another thing. I almost think that they may need to change the infrastructure of the roads because there's going to be that 20, 30-year period where it's going to be a mixture of people driving and automated cars,
Right.
I think. Which right now, I think in Australia, weren't they using semis?
I think there's some
That were-
tests, which the
Yeah, they had
logistics of that
self-driving
scares
semis.
me a lot because of not necessarily the driving aspect, but the jobs aspect.
Yeah.
If they lost all the transportation
Well,
jobs,
that's a huge industry.
that's like the biggest.
I think 70% of adult males are involved in the transportation industry in some sort of capacity.
I mean, imagine if that just changed entirely. That's
yeah.
just a recession.
That's an
or
entirely
depression.
different thing. But, when you think about the number of fatalities and people getting injured in car accidents by human error on a daily basis,
It's
and
pretty
you can
high.
shrink that number when they get to
Yeah.
when they get the system down and they get it figured out,
To
and
be
that
honest,
number
yeah.
can disappear.
I think
It's going to be hard to deny.
I think it's a good. I think as long as they don't illegalized, like right now it's not illegal to drive a historical car, even though that historical car is made out of pure steel, and if it crashes, you are going to die instantaneously.
Yeah. There's no airbags.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like the Vega, the hood was more narrow than the windshield. So if you even got in like a fender bender, that hood's going to come through the windshield and decapitate you. And see, that's still legal.
Yeah. Maybe they'll keep cities specifically for driving
I think
Like,
I could see that where it's like you
or
can't.
tracks
Yeah.
where you can go to just have fun and drive and everyone's just driving.
I couldn't see them legalizing driving though for like in say an area like this, a rural area for hell, maybe 50, 60, 70 years if the technology took off in 20 or 30 years,
Yeah.
So I don't have really, I'll be an old dead man by the time that happens, so
Yeah.
still driving though.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, and then you think a few generations before us, and it was, I'm never giving up my horse and buggy.
Right, yeah.
I'm not getting in this metal box.
This metal, wow, this contraption.
So, cars weren't always around either. But,
To be fair, those early cars, I don't think I would have given up a horse and buggy for a Model T with, you had to like, if you're going upwards in a Model T, you have to like turn side to side so the fuel can actually reach the engine.
yeah.
It's like,
Wasn't there a crank start?
yeah, there's
Yeah.
a crank start. And
Yeah.
man, I don't
Well,
know.
now they're like, with the Teslas, the newest car, it's
Yeah.
plug it into your garage overnight type
I
of
mean,
thing. So it's like
the technology
almost a
in-
crank start.
The technology in cars in the last couple of years has gotten a little scary, honestly, because people talk about how phones advance and how computers advance, but say back in the 80s, something like a Buick Grand National, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds is, wow, that's like the fastest production car in America. And now, you can get that in a basic sedan. And if you get a Dodge Demon, that's 0 to 60 in like 2.6 seconds. 20 or 30 years from now, some 20-year-old's going to be able to go and buy a Dodge Demon for 15 grand,
Yeah.
Just think about what that's going to cause. People, I don't think people are meant to have 800 horsepower if they don't know
Yeah.
how to handle it.
Yeah, it's a little bit out of control.
Just a bit.
I mean, you've seen those YouTube videos where drive the Ferrari off the lot and
Oh,
slam
yeah.
it because they
Yeah,
just
yeah.
don't know how to drive that
Yeah,
much
yeah.
power,
Yeah.
and it's like around a corner into a pole.
Yeah, instantly. And I mean, there's a big joke with Mustang drivers that's what Mustang, because there's like these cars and coffee events where people go and show off their cars. There'll be a lot of like,
Kind of like the Seinfeld show, comedians in
yes,
cars getting
yeah, I
coffee.
love that show. I watched every episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a good show.
Oh, it's great.
Have
But
you seen Jay Leno's Garage?
I have a bit. I know he has a YouTube channel.
Ah.
It almost hurts to watch though.
See, I haven't seen it, but I've heard.
He has so much. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's that jealousy. It's the only time I'm like, I have true jealousy of this man.
Oh yeah, he's got warehouses full of cars.
Just
and,
crazy stuff. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough.
well,
Not being jailed.
maybe you need to readjust your focus and go for
Talk shows.
talk show host.
That's it. I'm gonna be a comedian talk show host.
Funny thing about Jay Leno is they say when he was actually a comedian starting out, he was hilarious, and he wasn't always the squeaky clean American guy that he is now.
Network television.
The
Does it to
network
you.
television guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he had to kind of change and adjust a little bit, but he's always done stand-up comedy. Even in his 30 years of doing that TV show, he would go out on
Still
a
do it,
nightly
yeah.
basis
'Cause
doing
just
comedy.
Just
Yeah.
liked it, you know. A
He's
lot of
got
comedians.
this weird
do.
philosophy too, where he doesn't let anyone videotape his sets because he doesn't want them to get old. So he kind of still does the same jokes
That's good.
so
yeah.
nobody ever. You have to come to his show to actually
Oh,
see
that's great.
those.
Yeah, that's a good
jokes.
idea because so many comedians. I was watching this Jerry Seinfeld documentary where right after his series ended, he was like he made all new, a whole new set, and he just couldn't remember it. And there's so many months of him getting up on stage and just forgetting in the middle of a set, just standing there, and it's like, oh, that hurts so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. That's got to be crazy to do. Have you ever done stand-up comedy or tried it?
I will never in my life.
Yeah. That seems like a pretty
That's something.
scary thing.
That's way beyond what I would ever be comfortable doing.
Yeah.
Because you have a joke that bombs, they're just like, well, just go try it again tomorrow night.
Yeah. And from all accounts, most professional comedians, they say that it takes at least a learning period of at least 5 years of bombing. And,
Right.
just to get through that muck sounds like a terrible idea.
And then you finally have a set.
And then you're like, okay, I'm 6 years in and I'm pretty decent, but I still bomb like once a week. And I don't know. I've bombed on stage as a musician.
Really.
Yeah. And it's awful.
I've only played once live in my life, honestly.
Really?
It was for some foundation for pets or something. They're just like, it was very weird. There was like 300 people there, and they're like, just go play piano.
Well, you had a
off to
good
the
crowd.
side. Yeah, it was weird. It's
So you
just-
were playing piano?
They gave me a keyboard. I just walked in there with my keyboard and I played for like 3 hours. And
Was it just playing, or were you singing too?
No, it was just playing, but it was I had no idea when I walked in there and sat down. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I just started improvising for 3 hours. People
Wow.
kept walking up there like, "Where's your music?" I was like, I memorized it.
There you go.
I didn't memorize it, but they
Yeah.
give me tips, and I liked it. I liked performing. I got like a standing ovation
What was
at
it?
the end.
Was it like a charity event, or was it
Yeah.
like a piano bar?
No, it was just a charity event.
Oh, that's cool.
Some woman found me at like the person running it. I was at the antique mall. They had an 1800s bar piano. I was playing around on that, and then she was like, "Hey, you want to come and play piano for this Cats and Dogs Foundation?" I'm like, "Okay."
Cool.
That was weird, man.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Tyler Franklin and we did a collaboration.
We sure
what was
did.
that, a year and a half ago, maybe?
Yeah, probably a year and a half. I know
Yeah.
I was living in BG back then.
We had a great song called "Everything's Not Fine."
Very happy
It's,
song.
Probably maybe the best song ever written, possibly.
Probably, yeah.
Close.
It's I know my own mother, she's always like, when I tell her like, Mom, I don't think I can. She's like, what are you doing in music? And I'm like, I don't think I'm ever gonna make money. And she's like, that song you did, Everything's Not Fine. It's so great. I'm like, Mom, you do know I didn't make that entire song, right? And she's kills me every time.
So does she know that it was a collaboration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just because everything I try to make that's not that is just so weird, and I try to get it normal. Because that song was like it was a pretty normal song, you know. And
So I brought the normal.
yeah, you did, yeah. And every time I try to do that, I try to bring something normal. It disintegrates in my hands, and all the stuff I've been making lately is just getting weirder and weirder. And
Yeah, I think there's a place for weird though. I think with your stuff, it's more you come from more of an electronic background, which
it's the weird things. I don't listen to electronic music almost ever.
no.
Like
Well, I think what you make, I don't know if this is because you don't have access to drums.
I do have drums. I just bought some.
Oh, okay. Do you play them?
Yeah, I mean, I used to play a lot more.
Actually, didn't realize you were a drummer.
I would say to a limited amount, as in I used to play a lot more than I do now. Now that I live in an apartment, it's kind of hard to.
Yeah,
You
that kind
know.
of puts a damper on things.
Right, yeah. So that's why all the drums I use most of the time are just, on the computer.
Yeah.
Boop, boop, bop.
Yeah, and I think that if you're recording with electronic drums, that's automatically going to give it a less of an analog feel.
Yeah. It limits your options by quite a bit then.
Yeah, but then also with what you were saying about getting into the weird, I think you can also have a lot more options depending on how you look at it.
That sometimes becomes the issue when I got access to my new computer and I had, I spent $4,000 on it and I had like I could make as many tracks as I wanted. I didn't have to worry about this anymore. It's just everything gets so weird, hundreds of tracks and just
Yeah.
stuff that doesn't even sound like music at some point. It just sounds weird, and maybe there is an audience for it, but when you're younger and you think I want to make music, you don't think I want to make really weird shit. You think I want to be Guns N' Roses. I want to be
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I think at least for me, I've always had that idea of I do want to make music, but I also want to make music that people enjoy.
right.
Like there's I went through a phase where I was thinking I would like to make a song that's unlike any other song ever made. And then I was thinking about that and I was thinking about how could that be done? And I was asking some of my friends that question. And my one buddy was like, "Well, you should have a different person sing every word of your song."
That would be challenging.
And I was like, "Well, that would be something that's never been done."
right.
But then I was thinking about it, and I think not only does it have to be something that's never been done, it also has to be something that is catchy and good that's never been done.
That's where it
And
becomes,
that's the challenge because there's a lot of I think crappy music out there that's just poorly done, and you can listen to a song and be like, "Yeah, that's never been done before." You're
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
but
I
I don't
mean,
want to. But nobody wants to listen to
when
it.
I was younger, I'd listen to before the Spotify days, and you couldn't just I want to listen to this. I'd be listening to like Guns N' Roses. I'd listen to Bon Jovi. I didn't really have like
So you were into hair bands.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I don't think
I've never been a huge Guns N' Roses fan.
really.
Yeah.
I don't anymore. I don't as much. But I used to be like, this is the best music ever made.
Yeah.
But
That's funny because it seems like you're a bit younger with your generation.
I'm 20. Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't there for the '80s when they were huge.
That's the weird thing is like for a bit, then I started getting into like this like more modern like indie music like Franz Ferdinand and like Modest Mouse.
Yeah.
And then I what was it? It was probably I heard 99 Luftballons for the first time. I was like, this was probably like, I don't know, 3 years ago. I was like, this is the best song ever made.
Nice.
Since after that point, it was just I've been trying to find the weirdest shit I could find. I found these bands from Detroit like Electric Six. I don't know if you ever heard of Mindless Self-Indulgence.
I have. Yeah.
I love that band. And that's kind of where it went from there. And, I listened to sometimes Primus, and
Yeah.
all the stuff from Claypool.
So you're a multi-instrumentalist, and you kind of do a similar thing to me in that you just make music on your computer in your living room,
Yeah.
and then release it to the world through the internet. Is basically because
Yeah.
you've only ever played one live show, which that's I've played a bunch. That's not quite, but my experience was always with bands. So
I have,
being a solo
yeah.
musician now, it's been strange for me trying to transition things into a live show. But,
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I mean, for a while I love the concept of playing live. I kept saying I'm only in this to play live, but
I'm gonna play live tonight. You should come.
I mean, I could, man.
I'll be at Grounds for Thought in Bowling Green.
Really?
Yeah.
I could come. I have one planned tonight to smoke some cigars, but I can ask the guy I'm with to head along with me. He'd probably be in for it.
Cigar smoking. Where are you going to a cigar bar? Or are you just gonna go buy some?
Usually we go to, it's called Third Street in White House, but I mean,
Yeah, I know that place. They do music upstairs. in there.
that's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. I know one of the. I guess she wouldn't be a bartender. What would you call a cigar girl? She runs the front counter.
Maybe that's the term, cigar girl.
Yeah.
That's probably it.
Yeah, that's cool. Do they do now that the Cuban embargo has been lifted? Do you get Cuban cigars yet?
I don't think so. I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Maybe at least not here. I mean, I gotta get more classy with my I smoke a cigar a day, which starts to add up pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
I mean, some of these cigars, man, they're like that long, and they're like be done with them in 3 minutes. It's like there's $10 gone. I feel pissed now.
Expensive habit.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, but yeah, I could come. I'll ask.
It's interesting. They say if you want to go to Cuba, you need to go now because it's going to change so rapidly now that they've kind of lifted all those.
Yeah.
I mean, they said that if you go there, a lot of the cars are like 50s model cars because they just they haven't been importing a lot of stuff, so they've been fixing up these
pretty
things
incredible.
for years and
Apparently,
years. It's like a time warp.
Apparently, like the mechanics down there can build parts out of wood to implement into their cars because that's the only way to keep it going. So they're effectively this next tier of mechanic,
Yeah.
just making these things run forever. And
Well,
it's
yeah, because
insane.
they couldn't bring
Right.
anything else in.
Yeah.
What they had were cars from the 50s.
Right. So like we go there and like we're like, wow, this is incredible. There's all these 50s cars, and they're like,
Yeah.
this is not cool.
But they say that it even translates to like if you want a vacation there, now's the time to go because it's going to change in the next few years.
Right,
and
yeah.
It's just going to be like
That's
the
what I
rest of the world.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if the same's true for the cigars. If the cigars are going to go downhill, not going to be the
That could easily be possible. Yeah. I should.
awesome hand rolled.
I'll check. They're probably pretty expensive. I'd bet right
Yeah.
now.
Dominican cigars are pretty. I don't know. I've heard Dominican cigars are just as good, but the fact that they haven't been illegal, that the illegalness has made it almost like it's a bad thing, like that, like if you're drinking underage,
It's
it's
the
a lot
rush.
more. It's a lot more fun than if
Oh,
you're actually
yeah.
legal to drink. You know?
I don't get that.
No.
No, I don't. I don't understand that. Like for me, it's the quality. Like if I'm drinking, I'm not 21. There's
Don't put yourself in any sort of legal danger here.
That's true. I mean, if
Allegedly,
if
if
I
you were
were
drinking.
if I were to drink, I don't think I would. How do I phrase this, Mark? I don't think it would affect my drinking experience that didn't happen.
Right.
Right.
I don't think you have to worry about it.
I know. Yeah.
So, last I checked, I had 0 subscribers for this podcast. So
But this will get all of them.
that's true. You do have a giant audience to expose it to. So I was checking out some of your videos, like I said. I want to go back to that. So the animation on them is pretty cool.
Thank you.
Is that something that you put together with a computer program? Is that like computer animation?
It's it's
Or is it
almost
a secret that you're not allowed to
it's
reveal?
almost embarrassing,
Uh-oh.
the reality of it, which is
Something simple?
yes. When I was young, me and my brother, we had access to PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint. And
Mm-hmm.
in PowerPoint, you can draw with these drawing tools. And we would just play around with that for years. And then by this point,
Oh.
when we started making videos, we're like, what's the easiest way to make these videos? And it's just we don't use PowerPoint. We use like Keynote now, or we used to use Google Slides, but it's that same mentality. So we'll just use that, draw the pictures with like, a keyboard and a mouse, and then I put them into Final Cut Pro, and then do some fancy editing or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, your editing and everything. I mean, obviously it's a very successful channel, so you
Thank
know what
you.
you're doing, but I don't know, I was really impressed by it. And then
Thank you.
So and then you narrate the videos and once again, for people that don't know, if you go to Knowledge Hub, you can check out these videos, and also alternate history. That's the big one, right?
That's the big one.
Yeah. And well, they're both big.
That one's
It's
bigger.
it's you and your brother, and
Yeah.
yeah, you guys do some. So the narrating, do you write out a script for yourself and then just kind of read it?
Yeah, that's kind of the hardest part of the video, because I don't have a degree in history. I don't have a degree in anything I'm talking about. So, when you're going to put this video out and hundreds of thousands of people are going to see it, you have to make sure every detail is absolutely like perfect, or somebody's going to make a video like responding to you and saying you're wrong, you're a hack, whatever.
Yeah.
So that takes it can take weeks. Optimally now it takes days, because I really don't stray into, like, for a while I was trying to do videos on like weapons, and I don't know anything about weapons, so
Yeah.
it would take just months and months of
I was
like
gonna say, with the content you're doing, with it being a lot of like history or just general knowledge, it
it's
seems
getting
like
it's getting way easier.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like something that you would be learning a lot too. Like, have you considered it, like, in the last year or two? Have you become like a genius level scholar?
I wouldn't say. I mean, I always enjoy certain topics. Like, I don't know. When I was younger, I was really into this sort of subculture of like video game history, like the business side of it. So I learned a lot of that kind of shit. There's a big car history. Like, Russia's history is pretty interesting to me. But when you start getting into the big geopolitical ideas, it just I know stuff, but there's so much that I don't know and that I'll never know that I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough.
History, yeah, history for me was always in school. I found it very boring.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't really like history class in high school and so much. I wasn't into government classes. But now, as an adult, it seems like now when I pay attention to history, or when I check out history or learn something about history, it's fascinating to me. And I don't know if that's just growing up. And I guess for me it was more of, when I was a kid and you think back to civil rights movement or the 50s or 60s, it seemed like forever ago.
Yeah.
It seemed like such a long time. But now that I'm an adult and I've lived a few years, it's almost like, no, that was just yesterday.
Right.
Like, that was not that long
in
ago.
the grand scheme of all
Yeah.
this.
And it's just become really interesting for me just to see how things have evolved and where we've come from. And I don't know, I have an affinity for tribal societies and kind of understanding how we've evolved from tribal. Like, for me, I'm kind of big into like diet and things about like what we're eating, and just like paleo sort of Paleolithic diets. And I don't know, it's just interesting to me to see how we've evolved and where we came from. And
Right. I mean, we haven't even evolved technically. The human species hasn't evolved to digest bread correctly.
right.
So people, that's why if you eat too many carbs, you'll just gain exorbitant amounts of weight.
Yeah.
And that's just because of our evolution hasn't caught up with agriculture.
Well, and agriculture has evolved to where the wheat that we get today isn't the wheat that we
Right,
had.
yeah.
It's not the heirloom wheat that was originally much more digestible. I think like the pasta and breads that they have in Italy, where they're using more of that original wheat. They have a lot less problems with people in the gluten tolerances and
Oh, yeah.
just the overweight problem. And it just seems like that sort of pasta, that heirloom pasta, seems to be a lot better for your diet. But
Yeah, that's kind of a. I think there's also a lot of, without getting too deep into a tangent. I think there's so much to do with, like, I'm doing this fast food video right now,
Oh.
and kind of doing the exploration of why, like, basically why is fast food usually shit. There's a big, and I mean, it's because you have you have to mass produce it, but you have to mass preserve it as well for years. Every extra cent you spend on a better ingredient is going to cost you billions of dollars in the long run. And over time that starts to add up, where these, comparatively a fast food place compared to, say, a local restaurant is never going to be able to compete, just logistically.
yeah, yeah, it makes sense. And that's the same thing with, like, I know with factory farming, it's a big issue. And I mean, I think in general, if you ask any average person, they're going to disagree with the practices in factory farming. But the problem is we have 350 million
Million
people
people,
to
yeah.
feed,
Yeah.
and those systems, they need. I mean, I think we could do better systems, and we could have a better way of accommodating everybody. But those systems grew out of necessity, and it's
Yeah.
kind of just fueling this giant
Yeah, I mean,
mouth that is everybody.
I like to think of it as, people like to attribute all the problems of society on this sort of capitalist machine that keeps growing. But in reality, we live in an entire society that's based on consumerism, that, brand recognition is like religion to people at this point. So when you have when you have giant, farms that can produce all this food, and then that food goes to, hyper distributed across the entire country, you're just going to have, this is what you can expect, which I don't think there's another solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if we could all hunt for wild game and get your meat that way.
Right.
But if that actually happened and you had 300
Yeah.
million people
You'd run out, yeah.
hunting, yeah, the animals would just disappear. We'd have to figure out how to farm them and harvest them in a way, which is sad to say. But I mean, I think 98% of people eat meat, 97%.
I always feel like, I don't know, the mentality of somebody not I know there's vegetarians that I don't want to offend, but I feel like the issue with is it really practical to not eat meat and live a very healthy lifestyle?
Yeah. Yeah, I think from a social standpoint and for an understanding of, like, cruelty to animals and stuff, I can understand that vegan, vegetarian viewpoint a little bit more than a health viewpoint. Because
Right.
I feel like, and listen, I'm not an expert, but I think meat is a super nutritional
Yeah, protein
element.
in
Yeah.
general.
And I think as far as, like, performance, they've definitely had, the Olympic athletes that are proclaiming to be vegans and stuff, but for the most part it seems like performance is definitely enhanced with
Right.
protein and, red meat.
I think, yeah, if that's that in my mind, that's entirely your freedom to not eat meat. That's the free market and everything.
Yeah.
But don't impose that viewpoint on other people, because that kind of lifestyle might not be the overwhelming positive success that you think, the generalized you,
Right.
not you, the viewer.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure. Seems like I don't know. Yeah, I think people should definitely have the option to do whatever they want, but I think sometimes, yeah, vegans and vegetarians, get a little bit caught up in the proselytizing and
I hate to. I don't.
this is
Almost,
the better
yeah.
way to live sort of
Yeah.
attitude.
I think there should be no. I don't think anyone's political ideology should be attached to their ego. I don't think your self worth should be basically, I am this, I am virtuous, therefore I am better than all of my peers. I have more understanding because if you're dealing with these subjective concepts, and your entire mentality is, I just know more, you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's not gonna, no one's going to listen to you, and the only person that you're helping is yourself for your own like self-serving attitude.
Yeah.
And that's so, especially with social media.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
it seems like I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it
No, it's
seems
fine.
like with the abundance of information that's available to people these days, especially with the internet, it kind of gives people that power to wield, where they're like,
Yeah.
we're like, I know this and I know
And
that.
it,
But the
yeah.
problem is, I feel like social media wise, especially Facebook, is the algorithms involved in those platforms can insulate you in a bubble because you're
Yeah,
only getting
certainly.
you're only getting your own viewpoints. So if you're
Which,
if you're constantly searching a certain topic, then you're going to get all those viewpoints from that certain topic, or your feed is going to be filled up with
yeah.
one-sided type things, and it sort of puts you in a bubble.
I see a lot of issues, especially with people my age that seem to. I don't have any social media right now. I haven't for a couple years, but so many people, their entire political viewpoints are basically built on the concepts of how can I seem virtuous to others. How,
Social justice warriors.
yeah, effectively. Like their entire mentality is, and that's the issue. Is if you truly have, true empathy, that's great, but I don't feel like most of these people are having any mentality through empathy. It's a lot of it's just that self-serving. I am virtuous. I am great. Everybody else, you're a racist.
Yeah.
That mentality.
I think that kind of goes back to our tribalism instincts almost. Is people want to be special in their group, or they want to. If five of their friends are against a certain issue, then they
Right.
kind of just want to join that same. So if their Facebook feed is being filled up with a certain idea,
Yeah.
and all their friends are along those same lines, then it is a virtuous sort of stance for them to take, as far as like, yeah, I'm with you guys. This is our
Yeah.
tribe.
This is our cause. If you're against us,
Yeah.
you just don't know what you're talking about.
I think that's
Yeah.
just kind of innate in humans, but I think part of the problem is just the setup of these social media platforms. And I think some of the Facebook execs have even come out and apologized recently for what they've done, like what they've put together, because they feel like it
Yeah.
is possibly could be the downfall of the fabric of our society someday, which is
Yeah.
pretty strong words from
Yeah.
a creator of
A
Facebook.
platform, yeah.
Yeah.
I completely. I think that honestly, I remember the day that I left social media, which was. It was. I don't want to go too specific because I never like to give my political views on, especially attached to the internet at all. But for me, it was effectively when I realized a lot of people don't care about facts; they care about political leanings, and motivations are irrelevant. Your political viewpoints are irrelevant. At the end of the day, it's which side are you on? And everybody seems to, especially in social media, they seem to fall into these classes because there's a community there.
Yeah.
If if you're to the left, you're only going to seek out left-leaning content. If you're to the right, you're only going to seek out right-leaning content, and it becomes yes that bubble.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not even seeking it out; it's what's presented to
Right,
you.
yeah, because of the algorithm at the same
Yeah.
time. Well, but also like if you are, seeing something from the other side and they say something you disagree with, it's so easy for people to just say, they're completely wrong. They don't know what they're talking about, and then move on to the next content that reinforces an idea. And that's why I see it as I don't have a political science degree. I'm never going to run for politics. Therefore, my political views in the grand scheme of it all are pretty much irrelevant. You know, me spreading my political views isn't going to help anybody. It'll only hurt me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the case for a lot of things. I know that as a musician, if I'm on stage and I give a political viewpoint, I can understand the big famous rock stars doing that, but if I'm playing in a small club, there's no reason for me to alienate
Yeah.
half of the audience.
Half the audience, and that seems
And you can't
acceptable for. I don't think that should be acceptable. Like if you're a musician, I've seen so many musicians do this, especially recently, that are like, if you voted for Donald Trump, which I didn't vote for Trump. First of all, I wasn't even 18 when. I don't think I was. I was probably 18, but like. They said, you know, if you voted for Donald Trump, you're not a fan of mine. My issue is, regardless of viewpoint, regardless of anything, you're a musician. You're not a political science major. You're not a historian. So your view, why should we take your political views as the highest standard
Yeah.
because you can, you know, sing well?
Well, and I think a lot of times it's just kind of the celebrity platform that musicians may have, like say a Bon Jovi or something. I'm not saying that he's been political or anything, but if you're a celebrity musician, I can see that a little bit more. Why, you know, during an election you would give your viewpoint, because it is possible that you can influence a
Yeah.
lot of people in your direction. But if you're a smaller, not so well known musician and you're playing for some strangers,
No one's gonna
why
listen,
would you
yeah.
alienate them, you know,
The
by
people that agree
by
with
giving
you,
your political viewpoints?
the people that agree with you probably won't like you that much more, but
Right.
the people that don't agree will
And
just
they've
hate
done
you.
some studies. If you want to convince somebody of your political viewpoint, it takes like at least like 45 minutes of talking to them about
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. I know.
You're
that
not going to
feeling
do
well.
it with a little comment on stage of
Yeah. Takes a
and-
long time.
yeah. And so it's just like, I don't know. And I see local musicians talk about politics on stage. I'm always like, I always cringe a little bit. Not because I disagree with their political viewpoint, because I disagree with the point of even saying anything
Right.
political.
Right, yeah. I completely agree. I think in my mindset it's just they're not, of course it's their freedom to, but it's not their role in society where their political viewpoint should be so much more respected than
Yeah.
in those, you know,
Well, and
they are.
they may see it from, you know, the big celebrity rock star on TV. Oh, musicians are always talking about politics, and you know that's what the '60s movement was about. It was anti-Vietnam, but I think you're giving yourself a bit more credit than
Right.
like your voice isn't as big as a famous musician's voice, and so
Especially from back in the era where the big bands were universal, you know, like universally known to everybody because there's only a couple big bands. You know,
Yeah.
if the Eagles say something, people listen.
and there's only a few radio stations for people
Yeah.
to channel into that kind
So
of stuff.
but now if you're like, I don't know, some modern rapper and you say your political views, there's many other rappers that have many other views, and not that many people are going to hear, and not that many people are going to care, and
Yeah.
it's not that big of a message.
Probably just going to get drowned out. by
Yeah.
drowned? Is that a word? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Drowned? Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm guessing on your channels, you pretty much stay neutral politically? Try to?
I know I just try to avoid the issue altogether.
Yeah.
I try to give people virtually no insight into where I lie politically. And that's just because of my experience with seeing actors and musicians, you know, and people that you like their art, say their political views and basically, again, alienate their audience. And I see myself as first and foremost an artist and not an intellectual, because I don't have a degree in political science. I don't have a degree in history. So if I'm spreading art, I want to entertain people. I don't want to lecture about some sort of, thing I have a viewpoint on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I get that point of view. I would also argue that, a few more years of doing these videos and studying history, and you will be an intellectual. I mean, not saying that you aren't now, but I feel like the degree these days is almost it's a qualifier for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, when you get a degree, really what you're doing is learning. And there's such a massive amount of information that you can learn on the internet, by yourself these days that, I would argue doing these videos and learning about these different subject matters on a weekly basis, you're gonna be a master, a doctor in history very soon.
Even with history, I think history and politics are so intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, one of my favorite. I'm going to say this anyway because I don't care. One of my favorite YouTubers is Colin Moriarty. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he's he's Southern Californian to the right. So in the Midwest, he'd be like definitely in the middle.
Okay.
But he's been ostracized from Southern California because he's such an extremist there. But it's interesting to see because he has very different viewpoints on so many different issues than people that would say live here. And even if I don't agree with everything he says on every issue, it's still interesting to just listen to somebody whose viewpoints, come from logic and come from reason. And then I build my own ideas. And if someone else, says something else, you can listen to them and keep building up those viewpoints. I don't have many political viewpoints that are in stone, in perpetuity, that I will die, for this cause, because you learn something new every day.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it just takes a little bit of thinking things out to. I mean, I definitely went through some phases where I had ideas, but they weren't that well thought out, and I don't know that I could have articulated them to someone politically. But I just think as you get older and your viewpoints change, and you, I think you can become more rigid or more fluid, depending on your personality. But for me, I've definitely grown into being able to articulate my ideas a little bit better and just to understand them myself. There was definitely times in my 20s where I didn't even know where I stood politically.
Really?
I mean, it's just I had an idea, but if I wanted to articulate it to somebody, I may not have been able to describe my political viewpoints completely.
See, I grew up for, most of my childhood watching the Colbert Report and Daily Show and CNN. And, nowadays it's like, I don't like Colbert anymore. I don't. I haven't liked him since, a long time.
Now that he's on the late night circuit?
Yeah. I don't. Daily Show, I love that show when it was Jon Stewart, and it was like, I loved learning the stuff. Of course, those shows have bias, as all political shows would. And CNN, I used to watch that obsessively as a kid just because I know it's fucking entertaining. Like, so much shit. Seeing how a 24-hour news cycle scrounges for any information they can get and holds on that, it's intriguing. And so ever since I was a kid, me and my brother would just talk for, 5-6 hours a day about politics. And, I mean, I know my brother, I think he's given his political views more so than he's given it at least a little bit, but I know he used to hell, he worked for the Obama campaign for a bit.
Oh.
And I won't say he regrets it now, but he's not a liberal now. Like in any capacity.
Yeah.
But he worked for the Obama campaign, and that was kind of it was then a couple years later it started to get a bit, things didn't seem as clear, black and white as it always seen when you're a kid watching,
Yeah.
like these programs and whatever. And
Yeah, it's there's a lot of really complex things and
yeah. I mean,
things to understand.
it is.
Every little movement makes something else move in a different way, you know?
I've always found one of the most interesting political arguments for me has always been the gun debate because all my friends love guns, but I can't shoot because I'm like left eye dominant. So I'm terrible at shooting. I have to hold a gun like this, So I don't really care for guns. But my political views on guns are basically, they're always fluid, where I'm like, yes, I believe in the Second Amendment, but I believe in, I love seeing every side of the gun debate because for me, that's almost a political issue that I don't have a personal attachment with. Where I don't, so I just analyze, the data I get, and then eventually you learn statistics and you start to form opinions and blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of stuff I find interesting. I don't like if I have like cars, when there's political stuff about cars, my mind shuts off. Logistically, I'm like, I have this viewpoint. I don't care if my car gets 2 miles a gallon. I want to floor it,
Yeah.
and that yeah.
When you're talking political about cars, you mean like as far as the emissions and stuff, or
Well,
the regulations they put on?
I want to, yeah, like, because, part of me, it's like, I enjoy, this might sound bad, I enjoy the environment. I enjoy trees. I like trees.
Yeah.
They look great. I love trees. I like national parks, but at the same time, I could not imagine a world where they say you can't drive this truck because it doesn't emit, it emits too much pollutants, whereas something, say
Yeah.
any Chinese factory is just,
I was gonna say, when you see
Yeah.
those videos of China, where
Right.
they're just in that smog and
Yeah.
it just looks awful.
and to act like interfering with our personal freedom isn't any way comparable to those kind of emissions just seems like, okay, that this is just a self-serving interest to try to feel good, not actually solve a problem. That's my issue. And it's also, yes, I do want to drive a Dodge Viper, that gets 9 miles a gallon. That's part of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting when you see China and India, just their enormous populations growing. And I wonder if it's got to be a crystal ball for us to see as our population continues to grow what could happen if we don't
I almost
go to a cleaner sort of.
I almost don't want to, like, I know part of me sounds bad, like, I don't want to think about it, but yeah, it's like, because on some level, I would despise, I hate even fucking light pollution. I hate that where I live, I look up, look out, and it's like, oh,
Yeah,
it's just a
that's
great.
most places now. It's difficult to see the stars
Yeah.
at night.
And it's odd because
I'm pretty lucky out here. I can
right,
get
yeah.
a pretty good view.
That's what I figure. And it's like I live in my viewpoints. Like I think I live in the country in some capacity, and yet I can't see the stars. And thinking that anything like that could happen, like because of pollution, I think that there's certainly a movement that I appreciate. I appreciate the environmentalist movement, but I don't like people that use it for self-serving interests of that, again, virtue,
Yeah,
that, But would I drive an electric car? If it was faster than my gas-powered car, certainly. Yeah.
Tesla.
Tesla. I don't know. I love Elon Musk. I love
Yeah.
like a lot of stuff he does, but
Yeah, I like him too. I think he's got some really good ideas, and he seems to be getting things done.
yeah. Like this is an
Elon
idea.
Musk.
I love
2020.
that. I love
Or
that.
would it be 2022? When's the next president coming in?
2020. 2020, right? Well, 2020 would be the
2016 was when Trump.
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
For some reason, yeah, I guess it is been 2 years.
I keep thinking because I keep thinking like it happened last year. I was like, no, wait, That wasn't
We
last
just
year.
we just rolled into 2018, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. I during the Trump election was a very interesting time for me because I just graduated high school. I was going into college, and during that time, one of my friends was diehard socialist Bernie supporter, and it was so interesting to talk to him because I don't even think he was a liberal, but he was just this diehard socialist, and just talking to him, and I mean now he's so far to the right that it kind of becomes scary. Like, I think you know him actually.
Yeah.
I think you know him. Let's say he's going to a World War II reenactment pretty soon.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Him, he changed so drastically that it kind of scared me and thought, okay, I need to start analyzing things with my mind rather than following a trend
Yeah.
or what I want out of, life. Because, hell, I've seen myself do that with you in my music. It's like, if my political views change, my music almost changes. I don't know if you've ever... I don't know if you've ever had that issue,
Yeah.
but...
I mean, I definitely, as I've grown up and experienced more things, I've lyrically have gone through different phases and
I
stuff.
mean, even genres, honestly.
Yeah?
Like, I've had the issue where... I don't want to get into too much specifics, but yeah, and that's kind of evolved. And then I started to realize, politics and art don't have to be interconnected. I talk to so many people that, like, my friends are primarily, they're all... I don't know if you ever heard of the Strauss-Howe generational theory,
No.
but it's this theory that you can basically go back to, like, the early 1900s. Every generation, there's a sort of pendulum effect of political ideology where the entire generation will shift. And we saw the millennials, and it was, to the left. And there's been this, with let's call it Generation Z, is all the way to the right. So all my friends are, to the right.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many of them, their mentality is, since I'm to the right, I have to live a lifestyle that I believe is of a conservative. Basically, I have to buy a big truck. I have to buy a lot of guns. Got to drink a lot of beer, and I got to listen to country music. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking
It's
about?
a very stereotypical
Is
right winger thing.
this isn't what you have to... You don't have to conform to this because of an ideology. It's like saying if you're to the left and you instantly have to buy hipster glasses
Yeah.
and buy a beanie or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I assume that's
Yeah, that's interesting, the pendulum effect, though. I feel like that's part of the reason why Trump got into office was just like everybody was getting tired of the political correctness and the...
I do, but I don't know if you've ever seen my views on Trump. I feel like I can talk about Trump because I think Trump is different than talking about politics. I don't think Trump is a conservative. I think Trump...
Well, he was a liberal.
I think he's still a liberal. Every viewpoint I've ever seen him have is pro big government in almost every conceivable capacity, even if it doesn't. Even issues like net neutrality that are like hidden as sort of oh, this is just getting rid of big government. That's still just kind of feeding big government through its subsidiaries. And it's, recently seeing what happened with Trump has made me think. He might be the worst thing that could have happened to modern conservatism. The thing that might bring it back, which it kind of scares me in the sense that, like, are we going to lose a moderate mindset because, Trump's saying a lot of big government things and a lot of people seem to listen to him,
Yeah.
But he's not a conservative. His, advisor, Roger Stone, had the entire mentality of you're going to run as a conservative because we feel we can manipulate this audience. It's like that's pretty disparaging to think about your fan base is going to be manipulate them so you can win an office.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucked up shit. And it's like, I don't know, man. After that, that's when I was like, I can't be into politics, as much as I used to be because this, in terms of like in all of the grand scheme of history, we have access to all the information of corruption in, American history, but it's never been so blatant sometimes
Yeah.
as it starts to become. And I want to see. I don't like big government.
Yeah.
I don't like big government at all. And so anytime there's this sort of push for that,
Well, you have to understand that the government is they can't do anything for you without the money that you give them.
right?
So you have to trust that the government is going to do with your money something better than you would do with your money.
Right, and I've had concern, like, again, back to socialism. I remember discussing with people, again, let's call him World War II man, just for convenience sake. We're arguing the logistics of a 60% tax, and I told him, like, because this is back when I had no money, and I was like, if we had a 60% tax, how is that benefiting me? Because I live in an area with no public transportation. My rent is relatively inexpensive. My utilities are relatively inexpensive. And I'm basically just losing money. So even if this policy, helps people in, say, Southern California, when you don't have access to public transportation and you have access to relatively cheap income, like an apartment that cost even $600 to $1,000 a month, like, that's a lot different than living in San Francisco, where a 60% tax would only benefit you.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to understand that demographic shift that seems to occur between two completely different areas that in, any other part of the world may as well be a different country.
Right.
But here we're just like, oh, you're wrong. I'm right, Scary, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. It seems like we've gotten into a political tangent a little bit here.
I feel like it, yeah. It's too much of that Rubin report.
Yeah.
Yeah, too much of that.
But yeah, I think it's okay. And the other thing with the we were talking about the pendulum swinging. I think on a smaller level, the pendulum is kind of swung in that, that I think with my generation and younger generations, that radio hypocritical morning DJ voice, the hey folks, now we have next up on the, and that
what's
kinda,
up? Ugh.
and there's the same thing with that political speech. That my entire lifetime, all the politicians that I've heard, they all have that today, and they have these long pauses between every word, and we're going to reform this, and they have this way of speaking that is it's so fake.
Yeah.
And I think with my generation and people younger, I think there was a pendulum swing of we got tired of that weird speech pattern. It's like what is this from the 50s? Like when you just learned how to talk on TV and you're just copying a Kennedy, or and Kennedy had a weird way of talking too. Yeah. But I think there's a swing back. So when Trump came in office, it was I think there was a lot of people that were just like, even it doesn't matter what he was saying.
It was how he was
saying it. It was how he was saying it, and he wasn't catering to political correctness or everything has to be, you have to sound like a newscaster so much.
Right.
And I feel like that's why podcasts are taking off so much, is it's more of just a regular conversation between people rather than, so Tyler, how I can't even do a good news. I keep trying to give these examples of a news voice. I don't know what to say, but
I completely get what you mean. I mean, I call it the mentality of I still call it consumerism, even though it's kind of that. It's a mass organizational speak.
Yeah.
When one person speaking is effectively representing a gigantic organization with a lot of capital and a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that applies to radio, that applies to TV, that applies to any mass media, and especially with politicians.
Yeah.
And I think after the election of Donald Trump, I think every politician that, you're going to have people that still try to to be like, I'm a traditional politician, but I think a lot of candidates are going to try to seem like the, hey, I'm casual, I'm just going to speak my mind.
Yeah.
And whether,
Well, I do think it's a copycat sort of thing where
Yeah.
for years they've been copying that political speak because, hey, this worked. This is how Clinton got elected. You know, he doesn't point, he just puts his thumb out, and this is how he speaks. And so I think that politicians have definitely copied that sort of style in a way that this is what works. So, yeah, it is interesting now. They're going to be like, well, it worked for Trump to be casual. So now I wonder if it's going to be fake casual.
right, yeah. It's social Darwinism. It's no matter what, you just take what happened before and you just apply
Yeah.
it again.
I wonder if in the next election cycle, there's going to be campaign managers telling the politician, now, in this next speech, we're going to drop an F-bomb. Are you ready?
Right, yeah.
This is where you're going to slip it in.
Right here.
You know, I
And
wonder
that-
if that's
And then they can't do it right, so they say their whole speech and they just suddenly go, fuck! Everyone just
Yeah.
stares at them.
whoa.
Whoa, that was a-
overboard, man. That was some Dean.
He's
That was
like,
a moment.
Geez, I'll
Yeah.
fix that next time.
Yeah, it's interesting how things have changed and evolved, and yeah, once things start moving, I mean, I guess that's the balance of powers at work, or the checks and balances system that we have set up. So once things get moving in one direction a little bit too far, you get this backlash of people.
Right. I think at the end of the day, it's almost funny how a lot of Americans have a similar mentality of what is the correct direction, but there's like a because I feel like most Americans really would fall into the almost the libertarian camp.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, it seems as though most do, yet there's some discrepancy between all the facts and realistic like conceptions between all of that.
Right. Yeah,
know?
I think a lot of it is, and it's funny that you say that because I actually have had that same thought where if you had an individual conversation with each individual person, and you gave them a checklist of questions of things about the government and what they believe in, I think overall, and this is just my opinion, but I think a lot of people, their leanings wouldn't be that extreme. I think they would be pretty centered and pretty reasonable. But yeah, it comes down to this tribalism thing, and you hear, either CNN or Fox News telling you everything, and you kind of insulate yourself in this bubble, and you can become, I think, I think your viewpoints can be perceived as being more extreme than they actually are if you actually sat down and talked to someone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've had many friends that are far to the left or far to the right, and I sit down and I basically discuss the same issue with them. And at the end of the day, we always reach the same agreement, which is effectively like the sort of, well, is it truly affecting or hurting society, or what are the statistics? This is the viewpoint. And they're like, oh, I see what you mean. This is
Yeah.
fine. And then no one talks about it again, or there's people that just, if you don't get that chance, they just reject your notion entirely and say, you are wrong, I am correct.
Yeah.
This is why. And I mean, I think there's a lot of, I'm certain all of us have bias and preconceived notions that will, like, when it comes to guns, like, there has to be some sort of American preconceived bias that is just so ingrained. And it's like, just because I have no, I don't want mass gun control, but how do I put this? Even though I don't want mass gun control, why does gun control have to be a left or right issue?
Yeah.
I think a lot of these issues just become politicized instead of, how they probably should be, which
Yeah.
is logistics.
I think a lot of times that everything, they want to break things down to black and white. They want you to be 100% this way
Right.
or 100% this way. And that's just not the way it is. It's more of a gray area, I
Right.
think, for a lot of issues.
But again, you can't identify with that tribe if you don't have,
Right.
that, well, I'm this. I listen to country music and drink beer and drive my pickup truck.
Yeah.
I'm a big American flag. That's amazing. I still love that. I remember those conversations I used to have with that guy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. It just kind of goes back to, being tribalistic. And it is amazing, though, when you see certain right wing and left wing people that are on TV and they know that that's their brand and they have to stick to those talking points.
Yes, just to appeal to. I mean, I know Bill Maher has had a lot of issues with that, where he identifies as a classical liberal, which would be certainly different than the modern left, and he's gotten in a lot of trouble from his own audience because he'll say a viewpoint that doesn't conform with the modern standpoint of the modern left, and then they'll be like, well, you're just blah 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 blah, and be like, well, this is my viewpoint.
Yeah.
And even if he can defend a viewpoint,
It's almost like with musicians and stuff. It's almost like your branding. I think a lot of major bands. Definitely one of the most important things for musicians is having solid
branding, yeah.
which a lot of people overlook. But it's interesting because as an artist, once you get to a certain level with your brand, you sort of have to stick to your brand, not to alienate your fans at a certain point.
Because you are no longer loyal to yourself as an artist, you're loyal to the fans.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just started to grasp the notion of what I've always understood branding in some capacity, but my kind of music, and it just changes all the time. There's always just weird shit going on. Now I'm like, that's dumb. You just have to figure something out, and you have to go with it.
Yeah.
You can't just do whatever you want. You have to conform to a
So have you
brand.
found with your Knowledge Hub channel, do you find branding to be important with that? I mean, I know the
we do.
videos definitely have a branding style.
We kind of just we took a break for a couple months. Well, I did, and I basically found a new style that conforms with both Knowledge Hub and my music. And I sort of, because I do the music now for Knowledge Hub exclusively. That was never the case before.
You do like the music is all written by you, like you do.
Yeah,
like...
the background music.
Oh, okay.
I started doing that with the last video. I think was maybe the last two was the first two that I did that. Really cared about it at least.
Yeah.
And there's a very distinctive. This is my synthesizer. This is the kind of This is my not the same chord progressions, but this is the kind of music. It's almost lighthearted now instead of before when it'd be like, okay, here's a song, here's a song, here's a song.
Yeah.
And now I'm keeping the art the same. I'm keeping my music in line with that.
I was going to ask you where you were getting your music before, but is it just like was it a public library you were pulling from?
My brother just knows somebody,
Oh.
and he would just give him his music.
Oh, okay.
And that was all. I don't think I had any control of the music before.
I was going to say that was probably a issue with licensing and stuff. You need to
Yeah.
get free
Yeah.
and clear stuff.
Right, yeah. Now I found it a lot easier to make my own because I can change the tone of a video at whim. If you want to.
Yeah.
So I can make, my videos are a lot more, I want to call them humorous because I can do whatever I want with the music.
Yeah. So have you found that your new music direction, has it alienated any of your current audience, or are you still...
To be honest, I haven't really had much of an audience in years for music because
I'm sorry. I was talking about the
with Knowledge Hub. It seems like people like it a lot.
Yeah, that's good.
I've noticed. I think a good mentality is that a lot of people aren't. How do I say this? A lot of people aren't hyper invested in history, where they seek out a YouTube video to learn in-depth details about a historical topic. They have other ways to do that. They're either in college or they have access to that information on a 40-minute podcast. I don't want to supply that information anymore. So what my mentality is appeal to the wider demographic, people that want historical information on a vast array of topics that might not be just geopolitical, but just do it with my own style, my own art, and my own humor. And that's the appeal. The appeal doesn't need to be the topic. It just needs to be the content. that's kind of the shift, because there's so many more people that are qualified to do that than I, to talk about these political or historical issues in much better detail, especially if they can just talk in front of a camera, whereas I have to just create the art asset for every second. It starts to add up. 10 minutes is like that's going to take 3 weeks to basically make. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of work involved with that. But
Yeah, it's gotten easier, I'd say.
that's good.
The transition has definitely been partly to help with music, because originally I only got involved with this to promote my music,
Yeah.
which is kind of odd. But the mindset was, well, I'll do this for a couple of years. I'll promote my music on the side, and then I'll just do music. But music doesn't make that much money. I mean, it's so hard. Like, even looking at the bands that I love and seeing how much they make, I'm like, this is the highest I've aspired to have, and I make more than this right now. I can't, like, these, not huge bands, but just bands that I love.
Yeah.
And I'm like, music's off the table for making a living, and then the question has to become, what do I do now that I don't just want to give up because I enjoy making music.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Yeah, no, that's a very valid thing. It's like, if you were to get 500,000 subscribers to a YouTube music channel, I mean, that would be amazing.
That would be insane.
But when you look at major bands, they don't have that sort of. I mean, you can get that many views, I think, but to have that many subscribers, and I just don't think. I think YouTube is definitely a place where people are going to find music. I think Spotify and some of the other streaming services are pretty popular as well. But it sounds like you're just running into that issue that all musicians run into of it's just super difficult.
Right, and with my basis, I know before I was working on my first collaboration with you, my entire intent was work that entire summer and try to make an album. And, I mean, to be honest, most of the stuff I made was just complete garbage, and I never listened to it now, and I didn't really have a good idea of how to record or what I was doing. And by this point, I started to realize, okay, you're not good at making hair metal. You're not good at making classic rock or doing, this kind of stuff. So your options are to either blend in with a crowd and try to, say, all those bands, if you want to be a 90s grunge band, you can try to be a 90s grunge band. You can try to be a punk band. You can try to be that, or you can just pick something weird and try to get a couple hundred people to like you.
Yeah.
You're not going to make any money doing that.
What about this idea? What if you had a different singer for every word? That'd be cool, right?
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, man. And I noticed even with your channel though. So my music channel has a couple hundred subscribers, and I feel like that's a big deal because when I look around to a lot of local bands that are very popular, they're really struggling online to get a following. And so with the Onlys, my whole thing was it started as an online endeavor, and now it's starting to grow into a real life stage performance. But starting it as an online thing, which is kind of the way you did it, surprisingly, is completely going in through the back end for me. It's like a completely new thing because for me it's always been being in a band, having a live show, then making music and trying to release it to the internet.
Right.
And the internet's grown a lot over the years, but it was always a struggle for bands that were super successful in real life and on stage performances to gain an audience online.
Yeah.
But I guess where I was going with that at the beginning was you had an online channel with no sustain, I think.
Oh, yeah.
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 I was impressed by the number of subscribers you had there.
How many did I have?
At one point I remember looking and you had over 500, and I was like,
Really?
damn, this Tyler dude is awesome at getting subscribers. And then I was thinking, you shut that channel down.
I just forgot the email.
Well, yeah, but I was like, what a different perspective or different world you come from. And I was like, well, yeah, I guess for Tyler having 500,000 subscribers on his channel, and then you go to your YouTube channel
Yeah.
and you're like, there's only 500 subscribers. That's nothing to me. But
I
to
did
me,
see,
that would
yeah.
be like a giant.
That's where
And to most musicians, that's a giant channel.
I start to feel bad because with No Sustain, I mean, I didn't really realize it at the time, but yeah, I had people asking for like, where's the lyrics? If I
Yeah.
had a partial demo, it's like, where's the full song? It's like people were telling me they were listening to this for hours on end, and I didn't really.
Well, let me ask you this. From your perspective of a very successful YouTube channel, what would you say are the keys to building subscribers? Is there any magic bullet to help you get subscribers, or is it more the content that you're doing with the history rather than
I
music?
think I always like to say niche is key because I think there are some people out there that naturally will fall into positions of success. I mean, not to name any names, but people that for one or other reasons just magically seem to gain this because people like them, natural charisma or looks, whatever it is. But if you don't fall into that camp or don't want to rely on that, I think niche concepts always go so much farther than
Yeah.
broad strokes.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let's say you have a niche that is super specific. Let's say you're doing death metal polka.
Mm-hmm.
How do you reach that audience? Is it through? Do they have to find you and then share it with their other friends that are in that niche, or is there a way to target those people?
I mean, I'm sure there's social media ways to access it, but I personally believe that at the end of the day, they might just find you. Like,
Yeah.
I know there's this musician called Mr. B, the Gentleman Rhymer, and he is British, and he does something called chap hop, which is very proper British rapping about gentlemanly concepts, and it's a very niche idea.
Yeah.
He's like the biggest of his genre with like 100,000 listeners,
Yeah.
and other people will arise and do his same genre. So all of his listeners start to move over to other bands and vice versa.
Yeah. So there's not, I guess, so when you grew your channel, do you think that was just more based on you had an existing audience and they kind of just shared and it kind of exponentially
On
just,
which channel?
I guess the Knowledge Hub channel.
I
mean,
would
was
say a lot of that was when I started working on it. I already had some subscribers at least. I think it was
wasn't
like,
it your brother's channel originally?
it was called Geography Hub.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It was a geography channel. It had, I think it was like 20,000 subscribers or something like that. And a lot of it was trying to pick these ideas that I thought would appeal to a wider demographic. Because I think that's key to a lot of success
Yeah.
is simultaneously having a niche, but picking the bigger ideas within that niche.
Right.
For anything,
See, I guess the issue that I've ran into as a musician, and kind of what I'm getting at here is, it seems like a lot of musicians, they can have a song or any sort of music, and even if it fits into a niche, it is very possible with YouTube to post a video with your song on it and get 7 views. So how do you expose it? How do you get the exposure to an audience? And I think that's the biggest struggle for people.
it's gotten harder over time. I know YouTube has going back to monetization. There's stipulations about monetization, but once a video is monetized, it's really pushed into the spotlight, and then it will snowball. And now it's kind of reached a point where they don't. It's almost like they don't want new content creators.
They have
want
enough.
Yeah, they want the safe options, and they don't want to have to monitor for new options. So, I've seen a lot of YouTubers that are incredibly skilled and talented at whatever their niche is, and they'll rise and they'll gain subscribers. But it takes, I mean, even in YouTube, I don't think YouTube is a very, I don't think it's really that great of a career option anymore in terms of if you wanted to start it right now.
Yeah.
Because YouTube's really changed how they're like, these are the creators, they create content, go
Well,
forward.
Yeah, and I think there's also the question of if you're looking at it as a career standpoint of what's the longevity, what's the future
Yeah,
look like? Because it's kind
that's
of you don't really know where technology is going to
that's
go. Is it going to go to 3D? Are they going to have
well, there's always been this
virtual
mentality.
reality podcasts?
I know there's been discussions at like VidCon of there's generations of YouTubers. Effectively, the first generations where you had people like Angry Video Game Nerd before YouTube that were recording their content on VHSs. Then you transition to the YouTube days, and people would have all their content in 360p. It's unwatchable basically now. And over time, you had content creators that started getting more professional and had cameras, and they'd film themselves in modest quality and have some lighting. And now to have that, 100,000 subscribers plus, you basically need to have a production team. Not like you don't have to have that amount of people, but you have to have every detail is perfected. If you're going to produce content, it has to be something that you would almost have expected to see on TV, in
Yeah.
previous decades. That's where the issue becomes, because how can you convince somebody, if you have a job that pays modestly well, how can you convince somebody to say, drop your job, go work on YouTube for 40 hours a week and not get paid for 2 years?
Yeah.
It's an impossible task, and it kind of locks people away. And so right now, that's why you're seeing a lot of just these very odd, creative people that seem to take advantage of the platform, and most people just do it as a hobby, and then eventually it turns into a job for, I don't even want to say 1%, honestly. I don't know what the logistics are. The longevity is always a concerning issue. That's something that I think at my age, I know my brother, there's always this concept that if you build an audience, they will keep coming to your other projects, but we really haven't tested these ideas yet, So
Yeah.
even if he's writing a book right now, we don't know the logistics of how many people are like, wow, I like this book because I like his,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you said he does a podcast as well.
Yeah, he does a podcast. I don't know what it's called,
Is that
honestly.
has that picked up
Yeah,
subscribers and a decent amount of people rolling over?
it's had like, I think last time I heard it's a live feed. It was
Yeah.
like 30,000 people, but I don't know really the logistics of it. I know there's ways to make money using it, which is good because podcasts take time and whatever, So I don't know. It's just the internet is so odd because
Yeah.
how do you, once you have this idea, this lightning in a bottle, how do you take advantage of it? And,
Right.
you know,
So I know with a lot of channels, a lot of podcasts at least, they have multiple streams. So there's YouTube, and then there's also they put them up on iTunes, and you can get the downloads there, and Vimeo. Do you use any other platforms or just YouTube
for just,
for the Knowledge Hub type stuff?
I just do YouTube.
Yeah,
And
I
honestly,
guess there is a visual component, so it wouldn't really
Yeah,
work as an
well,
audio download.
we thought about it at times, but at the end of the day, I'm really not involved in the business aspects of this in any capacity. What I effectively do is I finish the video, I email it to my brother, and that's the end of it because I don't want to be associated with the business side of it. I know when I was, that begins to corrupt your viewpoints of the success of a video. Because whether you're proud of a video or not is irrelevant if that video performed at half the success of a,
Yeah,
less good video.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. So, so your brother kind of does a lot of the business, and
More so than I. He's involved in social media. I have virtually none.
Yeah.
and I prefer to live as such. I want my entire life to be about the art and nothing more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a good viewpoint to have, just to keep yourself away from that whole
Right.
world of distractions, I guess.
Right. I know there's fan interactions and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, I see it as if a couple 100,000 people are watching this and they enjoy it, that's good. That's good with me. I don't need to talk to people. I don't need to see a response to that as long as they continue enjoying the content. Because I enjoy, there's a lot of YouTubers that have, that I watch that aren't as big as Knowledge Hub. Most aren't. And I love their content. And if I were to meet them in real life, I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. And I get that they all have social media platforms that people can communicate with them, but I don't. I have no interest in social media.
Yeah. Do you find with that channel being so successful, do you find any level of like celebrity happening where you find people trying to contact you, or they're, I know there's a lot of comments and stuff on the videos, but
Honestly,
does anyone know who you are, or is it kind of
honestly, I've only at like college and out. I've like even people from high school who like they'll ask like, "What do you do for a living?" And I was like, "I have a YouTube channel." And they say, "What's it called?" I'll tell them. They'll be like, "I watch that channel," and that's the only like or people at college.
Yeah.
They'll be like, you do this," and blah blah blah. Other than that, I don't know. I've never been really one to care for the celebrity concept, so
I was gonna say it might help with the ladies.
that's true.
Have you pulled
Knowledge
that
hub.
card out? Hey, do you know who I am? I have a giant YouTube channel.
What's it about? A history. Oh,
Yeah. That's funny though.
I don't know, man. I know with honestly the only time I've ever been contacted, like I've been contacted from No Sustain to do like these college kids wanted me to do like music for their TV show pilot they wanted to produce for some network, and I told them no because they couldn't. They were like super unprofessional with business and shit.
Yeah.
But no, other than that, since I don't have any social media, I'm pretty comfortable just saying this is my content. It's weird shit. If you like it, that's great, and it pays the bill, so I can keep making it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I've noticed with my channel and my fans and stuff, the Tyler Franklin collaboration that I did get a really good
Really?
response from them too. I actually had some people comment things like, "This was the first song I heard of yours. I'm glad this was my first stop," and things like that. So
I mean, I think that song was. I thought it was a pretty fucking great song. I mean,
yeah,
like I know the first time I listened to it, I didn't think I was singing in it. I remember that.
oh really?
Yeah, I was like, did he just overdub his vocals in this?
No, man, that was all you.
I was well. You
And the thing is, I don't use any sort of auto tune ever.
Right.
Like none of my albums have ever had auto tune, and if you've heard them, you're probably like, yeah, we can tell. But
I mean, I've had so many people ask me about all my friends ask me like, so what do you use to auto tune? I'm like, why would I do that? 'Cause to be fair, all my songs have like 3 levels of vocals, and none of it sounds like fucking humans. It's just
yeah,
but still, like, I think that song that we did sounded it was a very
real.
real.
Yeah. Well, that was all analog gear too.
Right.
Real drums, real bass,
Real guitar.
guitars.
Yeah, the guitar was a mic connect that just went up to the amp. Like, I've never recorded using that. For me, it's always plug it into your preamp, strum away,
Yeah.
which there's a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that song turned out really good. But I told my audience, which is a much smaller audience than your Knowledge Hub audience, but I kind of gave them a heads up that we were working on a new collab a few months back. And I got a really good response. A lot of people were like, yeah, we can't wait to hear more from Tyler. So
I think I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about because I don't know if you do this, but do you ever go back to your old stuff and like for me, it's like a couple weeks late, and I'm like, I hate this.
Yeah.
I get
It's tough
that.
it's tough to look at your own stuff objectively, I think.
Yeah.
There's always that cringe factor of like, and I've had that in different bands that I've played in. I think it is possible to get to a point where you don't have that reaction to your old stuff. I don't know that I've gotten there yet, but I can listen to some of my most recent album, and I think it's still good. Like it
Yeah.
still holds up.
I always get that feeling with my stuff. I'm
Yeah.
always like, because I think it also has to be, you're the only one that's going to pick out the flaws.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think it's more of they say a lot of actors, they don't like to look at their own movies, or I think it's just kind of like seeing yourself in that light. The first podcast I did, I listened back to it and I was just like, ugh.
I mean,
I did not like it.
but at the
so-
same time, everyone listening could be like, I don't see anything wrong with it,
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just overcritical of themselves.
Yeah, well, I think that's better than the reversal of that.
Yeah, then thinking
Yeah.
everything's great. Sure.
I am the greatest musician that has ever lived.
Yeah.
And do not deny me this.
Then you're gonna struggle too.
Then you're going to have possibly more problems, honestly.
Yeah.
I know when I was younger, I started recording, I've been playing music a long time, but when I started actually recording music, I couldn't sing for shit. I had no idea about mixing in any capacity, and everything goes and just sounds fucking awful. Like, it sounds like somebody recorded it and had no idea what they're doing. And I'll listen to my new stuff, I'm like, even if I feel like this isn't normal, I can at least hear that. If I would have heard this 2 or 3 years ago, I guess I would have thought this was produced by a professional and not complete trash. That's the level I think
Yeah.
I always wanted to aspire to, is to just not be complete trash.
Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely a learning curve when it comes to mixing, just to get your stuff to sound like the stuff on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
And that's already at a level of like excellence, like
Yeah,
the
I
stuff that you
think
hear there.
on analog it is certainly harder, I would say. I know everyone has their own digital audio workstations they love. I use Logic Pro, and everything's down to a T at this point. It's like, stereo spread, multipressor, compressor, exciter, limiter, just plug it all in, and there
Yeah.
you go. And now everything sounds, I mean, even if I need to go back and turn down the sub bass a bit, it's still going to sound better than my first. This guitar just sounds like complete trash,
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's the level. There just needs to be a certain level you pass where people say this is acceptable, because most musicians don't, or most audience listeners that I've seen don't really distinguish between good mixing and amazing mixing. That difference is imperceptible to them, but if you've been mixing a lot, then you hear that instantly.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think it's just when you have a bad mix, that's when
that's when
people
it
notice.
sticks out, yeah.
and they tend to not notice that it's a bad mix, they just think it's a bad song. They're like,
Yeah.
and I think that's just the expectations of people too, is everything that you hear on the radio is already at a excellence level when it comes to mixing. So you're already being compared to the super high level.
That also
So-
becomes the issue of the musicians. Something I've noticed is that professional musicians, these are people whose entire job's livelihood is determined on their skill within music. To ask anybody else to compete with that is a challenge. Even if you spend 5 hours a day, playing guitar, that's almost irrelevant to the guy that spends 12 hours a day playing guitar.
Yeah.
That's such a threshold that for me, I gave up guitar for a couple months, honestly, after that, because I was like, I will never be able to compete with that.
Yeah.
So the alternative is to just not compete and just try to do something completely different. And that doesn't mean don't do guitar. That just means don't make that kind of music if, you can't. Because I don't think the audience cares as much anymore about the skill of the musician. It's more about the music itself.
Right. Yeah, and I think there's definitely a difference between having a good song and being a good songwriter and being a great musician.
There's a huge difference, yeah.
Yeah.
I know I don't even like to think about I'd never like to think about me making music because my production of music is just a horrifying mess of like I'll start off, I'll be like, I want to make a blues song today, and then 3 hours later it's done, mixed and ready, and it's some weird synth pop song, and
Not quite the direction you were going for.
not even close. It's just the polar opposite.
Yeah.
And I mean, at some point, I started realizing, like, I'll finish this blues song. I'll force myself. And I'll be like, when I force myself to do this, it sounds pretty generic. It sounds like anybody else could have made it. And I'm like, but isn't that what you wanted? Don't you want it to sound like another musician? Then you get into that divide and that issue, and
Yeah.
it's tough. That's why I've given up on the life of the mentality of a professional musician. I would just like to create content that people enjoy, because I don't think monetary compensation from music, from just a digital artist, if you're not doing live gigs, it's like a near impossible task.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not an easy road. And I don't know that it's ever really been an easy road. It seems like there was that huge blow up of record sales in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s and
Right.
60s. But before that, recorded music and everything, it was never this huge deal that it was then. And now it's become not such a huge deal. Nobody's buying records or buying music.
Yeah. I mean,
So it's almost like it was just a little blip in time where there was this musical heyday of if you make a record, you can sell it and make a lot of money.
and
But it
now-
was only a short, like 30 years, and now that's over.
Well-
so it's kind of back to how do you make music with,
Also,
or how do
I-
you make money with music?
I went to college for 2 years for audio recording, like mixing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was pretty. It almost was only discouraging because to see the distance, the amount of money that a professional, say Slash, his solo albums, which are effectively like, these are the best mixed albums, especially the last one, in rock. To try to compete with that in your basement
Yeah.
is insane.
Yeah, and when they're
yeah.
recording on, suspended floors in these perfectly acoustic rooms.
Like $100,000 mixer,
Yeah.
and you're just in your basement. And so the alternative is either don't try, or it's try to get as close as you can. And then I think every musician has to struggle with that kind of issue, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're all just, a lot of people aren't going to these studios and recording.
Yeah, well, that's going back to the industry standard as excellence, and when it comes to recording those
Yeah.
songs on the radio, so people already expect it to sound.
It's
That-
only getting better.
But people like Slash, he's working probably with producers that have been mixing for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
He's working with people that really know what they're doing. So for you to want to learn that skill in your bedroom, I mean, even if
yeah.
you have the mixing skills and the tools, which it is interesting with Pro Tools now, and technology, how much easier it's gotten. But at the same time, you're still in your bedroom. You're not in
Yeah.
a acoustic room that was built for music a lot of times.
And that,
And that's
to
a
go back
struggle.
to that one question about electronic music, that's why I do electronic music.
Yeah. Well,
It's-
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I have a guitar lele that I love. It's a guitar ukulele, but I know if I record that or I just play with the synthesizer, that synthesizer is going to sound at least closer to a modern mix than anything I can do with the dogs barking outside and
Yeah.
no treatment of my room, and just one microphone. That's why I do it, because for me it's all about what's the closest I can get to sound quality and then work from there.
Yeah. So, what do you think about this new collab that we're gonna do? I've already told a bunch of people, they got excited, and now
Well-
we've kind of put it on hold.
I
So-
would I know we had another demo. We had like one we were working on that was 2119 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a cool song, man. I was looking.
The only issue is I don't know any of the notes anymore. I don't know anything about the song. I don't have access to the file that it was
Yeah.
originally on.
For people who are wondering what you're talking about, so you had like a demo that was
Mm-hmm.
probably a minute long of a cool song, and I listened to it and I was like, "Oh, this is a really cool song. We could totally do this." And my idea was to just extend the length of it and kind of flesh it out a little bit more.
It was a heavy song. It was a lot heavier than.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'd want to ask you is do you want to continue doing that or do you want to do something not that?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think we'd have to. I think we could just think about it and.
Because it always comes down to me about, again, branding. Because sticking to consistency
Yeah.
is,
So, do you think we should go with something that's more like everything's not fine?
I don't know, because I've
Because
been
for
doing.
me, sorry to interrupt you, but it seems like we could stick with the branding simply because we could use the same instrumentation. Like we have the same drum set
Yeah.
here, same vocals, same guitars.
Well, that's the thing is I haven't sang like that. My vocal style is odd, but I haven't sang like that since that demo, which is a little weird,
Yeah.
I guess, for anyone to hear. But my voice is usually a lot higher pitched than that when I sing. It's very nasally. And that was the first time that I think in a demo I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do this. And it sounded great, but I don't even know if I can do it again. That's kind of a scary
Oh, that's just fear creeping in.
just fear. Well, I haven't tried.
Knock
you know?
it down. We could do it.
I mean, I don't know if you've heard. I changed the name of my last SoundCloud to Indie Trash, just to try to keep it secret from my friends that keep clicking on my stuff.
I was gonna say, you have a weird problem there of trying to hide your music from people.
Yeah, well, it's because
Most people are trying to get exposed.
my friends will find my, because most of my stuff just turns out to be 80s synth pop. So my friends will like find that song and send it to everybody from high school and be like, "This is what Tyler's been doing."
Yeah.
And it's this 80s synth pop that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I find with live shows, doing the solo acoustic thing I've been doing, it's a lot easier for me to play for complete strangers, people that I don't know, than like I have a hard time playing for my friends or anybody that I
Right.
would invite. So I tend to do the same thing where I try to keep my shows secret and don't let all my friends come, because then I just feel like it's going to be this awkward exchange between me and my friends.
Luckily, my friends are not. They don't hide their thoughts about my music. If my music's bad, they tell me this is complete shit.
Yeah.
If it's
Well,
weird,
that's good to at least
yeah.
get some
The issue
honest
also though
feedback.
is everything I make that's weird. It's just this is weird. And if it's a like I'll sit down and I'll intentionally make a song that I'm like they'll like this. They'll be like this is great. That's not what that becomes an issue because if you just try to cater to people's genres that they like, if they like a rock song, you make a rock song and they like it, does that really mean they like your stuff, or do they want you to just do rock?
Yeah.
know?
They like the genre more than what actually you're putting together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I try to get feedback from my friends, but
Are they helpful?
I think so. I'm always very insecure about my music, so if I give it to somebody and then I don't hear back from them for a few weeks, I'm like, oh great, it was shit, like they didn't like it. I always get insecure like that, and then so that's one of the problems. Is a lot of my friends just won't like. I think I gave my brother one of my new albums. I was like, here, dude, check this out. Let me know what you think. I'm not feeling very confident about it, but just let me know what you think. And then I never heard back from him.
Ever?
No, I still haven't heard back from him.
Oh,
This was 6 months ago.
that's horrifying. Yeah, I mean,
Well, yeah, I did hear back from him. And so I'm like, okay, he thought it was garbage too. This all goes through my head, and I build up this whole storyline in my head. And then a couple weeks ago, he's like, yeah, I never actually listened to that CD you gave me.
I've
So it's
realized,
like, oh,
yeah.
great. Well, I'm glad that I thought it was shit, and I made up this whole storyline in my head that it was shit, and it's all just a false narrative.
Well, it always irritates me that how much work it takes to make it, and people don't seem to understand this is so many hours of work.
Yeah.
It's just,
Well, I think it's just everyone's so exposed to music, and music's everywhere you go, and there's background music in every restaurant, and
yeah.
I think music is just we're so inundated with it that what actually goes into making it, it's kind of gets lost on some people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how. I know every musician. I listened to like the first podcast of this and how that guitarist produces music, sort of thinks about music, and it's interesting because so many different musicians have a completely different philosophy on how to actually make a song than say I do, and it's just it's always fascinating,
Yeah.
but it starts to become an issue of I don't think I'm making real music then because I mean at the if you're not falling into that and you don't make something that sounds like real normal music, it's pretty hard to convince people that it's not complete garbage, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't know that a ton about what your process is like, but I like the style you have for sure. It kind of reminds me, I mean, it's hard to say because I know you've gone off in a lot of different genres.
I've nailed it down very recently,
Yeah?
honestly. Yeah, my last demo, which is called Indie Trash by Indie Trash, is the definitive demo that it fits into the style of what I've been doing with Knowledge Hub. It fits into all that, and I'm like, this is it. There's no doubt in my mind. I've let it sit there for a couple weeks, and I'm like, this is it. And
So where can we find this on SoundCloud?
on SoundCloud,
Indie Trash.
Indie Trash, great
All
name,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's great.
A lot of thought put into that one.
No, it's I mean, when you think about band names, man, there's some ridiculous ones out
I've
there.
never
So I
been
don't
good
think
at
there's
that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with Indie Trash.
Well, I mean, what it is it is indie trash. You know, everything I
Yeah.
listen to is indie trash.
Yeah.
At this point, yeah, I used to listen to a lot of Archers of Loaf, or a '90s indie band. They had the worst production of their like. It did sound like it was produced in a garage, and that's
Yeah.
kind of the appeal to me is because you're like, this sounds good, but it sounds like it was produced in a garage,
Yeah.
and you can hear errors in the music.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there's a real element to the music, I always find that because I've done a lot of like thinking about what it is that people like about music or what people find enjoyable. And one of the things that I found that I particularly like about music is if you can hear something in the vocal that gives it a realness, or if you can hear like there's a Beatles song where partway through the second verse you hear Paul McCartney almost chuckle to himself a little bit.
Really.
Yeah. I forget what the line is he's singing. I forget what song it is, honestly. But I know there's a point where you can feel like his amusement with whatever was happening in the room. And that almost, like that kind of, or when you can hear a guitar, when you can hear the fret noise that comes
Right.
off of a guitar. Like sometimes those little real elements, I think,
Definitely contribute to.
yeah, it's really what makes the music sound. I don't know if it's just the realness of it, but it makes it sound like you're in the room with them a little bit.
And that's where I've always dealt with that struggle of like, I've always had the mentality, don't produce electronic music because every 20-year-old wants to be a trap artist or a DJ making dubstep. And it's,
Yeah.
that's why for me, it becomes this struggle of, so how do you not do that and still try to sound real? And that's why I always see it as I want music that's odd. All the bands I listen to do something odd or different and strange. It doesn't have to be comedic, just different, you know, like
Yeah.
one System of a Down, you know, you have Serge Tankian, the way he sings is different and people
Yeah.
like it. It's not, a lot of artists sing different and a lot
Love
of people
System
don't.
of a Down.
Yeah. And I mean, he went on to do a solo career where it's like classical music almost with him singing still, and it's
Yeah.
such odd stuff, and I
I
love
think
that
a lot of
weird
that comes
nature.
from his roots too. Like
Yeah.
I've seen the. Have you seen the videos where he's like he sings with his dad and like plays guitar and
Mm-hmm.
stuff? Like it's
Yeah.
almost like a family tradition of them. Like I can
Yeah.
just picture them sitting around singing, singing at family gatherings and stuff. But
And that kind of like that whole mentality of music where it's not it's not that I hate pop music, it's that I don't enjoy to listen to like a consistency that I can hear anywhere else, where I just hear another Five Finger Death Punch song that sounds that has the same progressions, that has the same rhythm, that
yeah,
another dance song with four on the floor beats,
yeah,
all that stuff. It starts to add up.
yeah. I think uh, I think with rock music, the formula that a lot of bands are using, and I've used it on some songs because it does work, and you don't even a lot of people don't even realize that there's this formula. But I'll tell you this: next time you listen to the radio, listen for this formula. So it's gonna go verse A, verse B, chorus, verse two, which is half the length of the first verse, second chorus, change up, quiet chorus, loud chorus.
I've actually,
I think we
I've
might
tried
have used that
yeah,
for
for
Everything's Not Fine.
and there's like with the whole concept of social Darwinism or evolution of this, taking those ideas and expanding upon them, people find that interesting and people like that, so
Yeah.
we keep using it.
Yeah.
I noticed I always want to do that, and something happens on the way where sometimes I'm just like,
Yeah.
well, this could be a lot better. This really weird sound would be more sufficient.
Yeah. See, on my first album, I had that idea in mind because I'd played in bands for so long, and it was always like, oh, we just played a second chorus. Now we have to go into the change up. Like that was always like the standard thing to do. So my first album, a lot of those songs I was writing, it was more of a, if this song's only a minute long and I feel like it's over, that's going to be the end of the song. And so I have all these weird little short, like almost short story type songs, but they don't follow that formula very often.
Really?
Which was pretty,
Huh.
it was interesting for me. And I don't know that I was consciously doing it, but like for instance, there's a song called Here She Comes, and it comes to the second chorus. And normally after that second chorus, if I were going to follow that formula, I'd go into a weird change up or something. But in this particular song, I was like, okay, that's the end of the song.
Oh yeah, I
So
remember that.
it just kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
ends right there. And
I
it's
really
all,
like that because I do a lot of that kind of stuff. I was like, this makes me feel a lot better that I'm like, because I always get worried because I've been doing a lot of like these verse chorus, then the change up, and then another change up, and then the chorus, and a
double
lot
change up.
two change ups and no two verses. It's just verse, chorus, very fast paced, and it's weird and
Yeah.
but I mean I don't like to do that all the time because there's a reason most music shouldn't follow that formula,
Yeah.
but taking those chances sometimes is a little bit more it's almost a bit of a let's see if this works.
Right. Yeah, I had the idea too of just trying out new stuff. Is I was gonna make an EP that was gonna be like 5 songs or however many songs, but something small. But the idea was to make each song a minute in length or under,
Really.
and then have them all combined theme wise. So here was my idea in a nutshell. It was gonna be the theme was gonna be a standard day for me, waking up to going to sleep. Each section of that day would be a different minute-long song.
Oh, that's
So
pretty
it
cool,
turned out to
yeah.
be a 5-minute EP of 5 different songs, but it's only 5 minutes long, so it ends up being like a long song type
I like
style.
that. Yeah.
So I started this idea, and I only got 2 songs in, but if you listen to my album, the song Freedom is like a minute 35. That was my after work song.
Really.
Works out, you have freedom.
Oh.
And then I have a song called The Commuter that's about a minute long. And that was I go to work,
I remember that. Yeah.
commuting to work. So these were both songs that were descriptions of my day that were going to be into that
That
plan.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but so they're both really short songs, but then I ended up scrapping that whole idea, and they
remember.
just ended up being 2 tracks on my album. But it is interesting when you get creative like that to think of the endless possibilities of how you can write songs or what sort of format you can put them into on an album.
Yeah, that's. I know the whole album mentality's always scared me.
Yeah.
Because in the last 2 years, I've probably produced, like, out of my song, I just keep making song, and you know.
Yeah, you've been really prolific with your.
But when they're all a
Song
different
productions.
genre, and I sound weird in all of them, and some aren't produced as well, and
Yeah.
then I stopped thinking about an album. And a lot of times I had the mentality of, okay, I'll start off with a more normal song, and by the end of the album, it'll just get a little bit weirder each time. By the end, I can do whatever I want. I'm like, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
This
See,
doesn't work at all.
That was my thing too with my album was I wanted to go. I didn't want to go in a direction. I wanted to go in whatever direction the music took me. So like each song, if I started on the guitar playing it and I come up with a cool melody to sing over it, my whole goal for that was just to make that song the best I could make it with whatever sort of layering I had to put on that. And so I wasn't really focusing on, okay, this has to fit in this genre. It was more of just making the best song in any genre I can. So then what ended up happening is stylistically it kind of went in a lot of different directions. But what I was hoping would tie it all together was just the fact that it was just one person making all the sounds, and
Right.
I was using the same guitars for everything and the same drum kit. And
I thought it tied together nicely, personally.
well, thank you.
I mean, I never even thought twice of this isn't in the same album. I just thought,
Yeah,
but I do know a lot of people seem to have this conception that within an EP or an album, every song must sound nearly identical, which is odd because that means you're just going to have 3 good songs and a bunch of filler.
yeah.
That's
You
why.
do. I think you do find that with a lot of professional bands, though. I mean, if you think about, like System of the Down, for example, they have their style that's very. I mean, they're loyal to their brand, like we were
Right.
talking about branding earlier. Or, like if you think of Metallica, you can understand what that brand is immediately. And they don't really move that far out of that
Except for
brand.
Saint Anger, the best album of all.
Oh, yeah?
I used to argue with I loved Saint Anger.
Was Saint Anger, was that the Rick Rubin produced one?
I believe, like,
That was the prison.
they said Hetfield was in rehab the whole time. He misses a ton of notes while singing. It was recorded literally in a garage, and the snare sounds disgusting. It sounds like it was mixed in a garage, and people hate that album. I actually really like it.
Yeah.
It was a like a punk album, but people consider it the worst thing they ever made. And I don't know.
Well, that could be one of those things where they alienated their fans by
Right.
leaving their brand
They
or
left
going
the brand,
too far
yeah.
outside of the brand.
I know Chinese Democracy did that with Guns N' Roses as well, which is,
Yeah.
when I was younger, as I said, I like Guns N' Roses. Nowadays, I won't listen to Appetite for Destruction or Use Your Illusion 1 or 2, but I'll listen to Chinese Democracy because it doesn't sound like hair metal. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's not hair metal. And
Yeah.
the traditional fans are like, this is garbage. There's no Night Train.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting how that works. But then I think there are some bands that have been able to. Their brand has been to not have a I almost feel like Radiohead is one of those bands
Right.
that every album they can go in a different direction.
I know a lot of indie groups,
Yeah.
and some people would call Radiohead, some people would call them indie, but a lot of indie groups have been doing that where we're going to do a completely different style for every album, and even within the album, and people are just going to like it because we're
Yeah.
odd. I know Alt J did a lot of that. I know Moss Mouse did.
Alt J, yeah.
Alt J's done I know. I like me personally. I only like their first album, and that's where it also becomes: was I isolated? Did I, get kicked out of that audience? It's like no, they just
They,
moved on.
well, I think you liked the original branding that they went with, and then they changed it on you.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's same thing.
Which
with,
I that was kind of what I wanted to do. Was I wanted my brand to be any direction, expect the unexpected. You could hear a song that one song can sound like, dark goth, and then another song can sound like happy ska. Or,
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to go in any direction and not alienate my audience. But it's been seems like a convoluted brand for me. It's really been hard for me to nail down my branding.
I guess, yeah, if you think about the first album with Bad Clark and Here She Comes in the same album, now that I think about it,
Right next to each other.
they were?
Yeah.
Really?
I'm pretty sure it goes from Here She Comes, which is the happiest song I've ever
Yeah,
written,
yeah.
right into Bad Clark, which is a darker. It's honestly, it sounds like it should be on a movie soundtrack for a Superman movie. But
I like I that album. I mean, that was a great album, man. But
Bad Clark was the idea for that song. I had this idea in my head of a storyline of Superman. So here was the storyline that was in my head. So Superman is at a bar, and I don't even know if this can work, but Superman, I believe, is a fictional story. So I'm kind of taking liberty with the fiction. So, and I've had some comic book nerds come up to me afterwards and like scold me and be like, "No, the Superman would not do this." But so my idea was Superman's at a bar. He has a few too many drinks. Starts to get a little drunk. This is where the comic book nerds are like, Superman
can't get
drunk.
The sun rays would come and just rejuvenate his cells.
Yeah, but I feel like I saw a Superman movie where he got drunk in a bar. And
Well,
he turned into evil Superman.
I used to be into comics, not like reading them, but I was into the culture of seeing other people talk about them. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could just say it was like some sort of kryptonite alcohol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Well, the basic premise of the idea was
Yeah.
he's at a bar, but he's with Wonder Woman, which just probably doesn't make sense
No,
either.
it does. It makes sense.
So they're sitting next to each other at a bar. Superman gets drunk and starts to become angry Superman. So he becomes like a bad, evil Superman. And then the whole idea was he is trying to convince Wonder Woman to join him in taking over the world.
They actually did have a comic book about that. Well, it was a game.
Wonder Woman, Superman teaming up?
in taking over the world and evil.
Yeah.
It was called Injustice: Gods Among Us.
Oh.
It was the best comic.
Well, there we go. I wrote the soundtrack.
You wrote it, man.
I wrote the soundtrack for
You did.
that comic book.
I think that works, man. I thought that was
That was the story that was going on in my head, but then when you listen to the lyrics and you don't know that background story, people can get a completely different take off
right.
of that.
Do you usually have a story for each?
Well, the way I write is I think lyrically I'm very metaphorical.
I think that's the best way to do it, honestly.
Well, honestly, it's a bit of a protection for myself, almost like not overexposing my true feelings.
Yes, I get that.
But for me, although it's always written in somewhat of a metaphorical way, there's always a personal story that I relate to it. But I think people would be surprised by the actual story about what most of my songs are about, rather than what they would interpret it as
Yeah.
the meaning. So I kind of hope that my songs are open to interpretation for people,
I think
and they
that's-
do
yeah.
have a meaning to me. But if I actually told you the meaning, people would probably be like, "Oh, that's not what I thought it was about."
Right. I most of my songs have almost a political basis a lot of the times.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but like a lot of the times, I think the song "Indie Trash" is about my. It's similar in that EP you're talking about, where it's about my day, but it's so vague that I don't know if it comes across, and I don't care if it comes across, because for me it's not about whether the audience can take whatever they want from it.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, they can just say, "This is what I think it's about," and if you think it's about that, that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I have just to give you an example, I have a song called "Paparazzi Freakin'," which on the surface, if you listen to that song, it's literally about somebody walking down the red carpet and the paparazzi freaking, or being a celebrity in Hollywood and, paparazzi hiding in the bushes. And like that doesn't relate to many people. Like,
Right.
how many celebrities do we have in the audience? And there's like nobody. And how many people are getting chased around by the paparazzi? Well, nobody.
Right.
So lyrically, if you take that literally, people are like, oh yeah, that doesn't relate to me. But what the song is really about is anxiety. And so it's
Right.
like
And
when you,
I think that's what a lot of people will draw from that rather than I think most people, if they listen to lyrics at all, because I know a lot of people just don't listen to lyrics, and it just functions as a narrative for the singer to put notes in the song, which
yeah,
is always a shame because that's like saying the whole because writing lyrics is uh, not particularly easy. It's something you have to kind of work at to get
that's the hardest thing for me
really
when it comes to making music. Yeah, the most time consuming thing that takes the longest and is the most difficult and the most scratch it out, start over type thing is always writing lyrics for me.
for me. It's the aspect of form in lyrics because I'm so used to writing lyrics as raps, even though I don't rap and I'm not a rapper. But
Yeah,
I just don't know how to write lyrics otherwise. And now I've been more deliberate about this note will go with this word
yeah,
specifically. And it's given me some really weird shit in my songs, but it's better than having the,
yeah.
you know.
And that's one of the things too for me is I always start with a melody.
Mhm.
So when I write lyrics, I'll have a melody. So, and it tends to just start as like mumbo jumbo, like not even real words. I'm just like, but the idea for me is I come up with a really catchy melody. And if there's any, most of my music, I don't feel like I have any sort of natural talent. It's all just been and a lot of musicians can probably relate to this. It just takes a lot of practice to get good at playing music. But if there is one place where I think I have a little bit of natural talent, it would be in coming up with melodies. And so that's one of the things that I feel like I was pretty good at to begin with, and that's one of my strong points. So what I try to do is I try to come up with a cool melody first, and then I could just whistle a melody. But then the challenge for me is I need to write lyrics that fit into that melody. So it's almost like the lyrics have to fit into a crossword puzzle. Like if you were writing lyrics, like this word has to have two syllables because that's what fits into my melody right here.
That's I do that sometimes. But then I also have the issue of picking the topic for the song and then I don't know, all my songs when I go back
Yeah.
and listen, I have so many songs that were supposed to be happy songs and they're just so fucked up in the lyrics. And I'm trying to figure out
Where it turned on you?
yeah, like I have this song called Sign, which is just it's a generic cheesy xylophone 80s synth pop song. The first word is just me yelling fuck in falsetto, and the whole song is like about me telling someone to kill themselves. And I'm trying to figure out at some point in the production of the song, I must have thought, let's change the lyrics.
Yeah.
Let's give it something different.
Yeah.
I have that issue. I can't get the tone down very well. It's always goes a little bit too dark than I want it
Yeah.
to go.
See, I would have that issue too. I would generally would never come up with. I mean, sometimes I come up with a general idea of what this song is going to be about,
Hmm.
but most of the time I let the lyrics kind of dictate it and the tone of the music kind of dictate it for me. But
That's a good way to do it.
yeah, but I still run into problems though, especially when I'm doing the melody first. If I have a specific idea that I want to express, sometimes I do have a problem with I can't fit the words in without it sounding like I'm just telling a story. And I think a lot of songwriters struggle with that where they'll have like a perfectly written rhyme and they want it to incorporate it into their song, but it doesn't actually fit the melody. So then it ends up just sounding a little bit off, I think sometimes, where they're like, it just sounds like somebody is talking to you a little bit.
See, I honestly have built every song chronologically. I every note is just chronologically placed, and then after I place that note or that set of measures, I'll just put in words. I won't really think about it twice. And then when I get to the chorus, I'll get to the chorus. And then once I get those three parts of the intro, the verse, maybe the second verse, and the chorus, I'm like, that's the song.
Yeah.
Double it, put in a guitar solo or whatever you want in there, and then figure out your outro. And the melody for me is always that it's based in the musical theory of like first, thirds, fourths, and fifths in minor, which would basically any, as I've been saying, 80s synth pop song, which is where you get those driving melodies that are very mathematical in a lot of ways, but there's certainly a creative freedom with that. It's just understanding the intervals between that and then saying, how do I want to paint this picture,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I find a lot of times that I'll have a song that I have one line come out, and it just comes up. I don't know, out of nowhere, but I'll just sing something out. I'll be like, oh, that was a good line. So like for me, the song "Sing for You," I had this line where and it was the very first line of the song was "I could only sing for you," and then for me, after I had that one line, which was the first line that I came up with in that song, it was more about writing the song about that line and relating it back to that line rather than having a concept ahead of time. Like sometimes I'm just singing gibberish and then real words will come out of nowhere and then I'll just be like, oh, I like that, and I'll make the rest of the song about that.
I always just I just type it out. Like, I remember I wrote a song one day. I was like, I want to go get some Rockstar tea. So I wrote a song about Rockstar tea, and I was like, well, what else? This song is pretty shitty, and I put a lot of work into it. So the rest of the lyrics are about how shitty the song is. I mean, I think one of the lines of the song, and this song again was like mostly falsetto, was some call it rock, some call it fuck, depends on how you use it. That is the worst line I've ever written, and I was like, I don't care. I don't care if this line sucks. Yeah. It doesn't even rhyme, but I'm just gonna throw it out there because.
I mean, I guess I would have to hear it in context with the song, but it sounds alright to me. But
it's something. I think the song's called. Oh, it's called Tea. That's what it's called. That's also on Indie Trash.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta check it out, man. I don't know. I think lyric writing, man, is just such a weird thing. It's probably a different process for most songwriters, it seems like.
Yeah.
I have a lot of different processes when it comes to just the way I approach a song or writing them in different ways.
I actually really enjoy the writing. I used to hate it, but I actually really enjoy writing lyrics now.
Yeah.
Because I can be like, this is the point of the song, this is the consistency of the song, and this is, there's a meaning to this.
Yeah.
Because when I first started, I was like, okay, what words rhyme?
Yeah.
Throw that there. You're all good.
I think there's a carefreeness that kind of comes with that too, though.
Yeah,
like,
there
sometimes
is.
I wish I could get back to the point where I could just throw lyrics out and just forget about them. But now I'm so self-conscious about them.
It gets hard for me to do that because then I can't think of the rhymes anymore.
Yeah. Neil Young used to have a great saying where it was just, he would just put out music and they would ask him about the lyrics and stuff, and he'd be like, yeah, I don't know what I wrote for the lyrics. He's like, I just put them out there, and it's for everyone else to judge. It's not for me to judge.
Right,
if you want to judge my lyrics, go ahead.
That's great, yeah.
But he's just kind of almost that idea of just keep writing and don't look back, sort of.
I think that's a good mentality because I think the lyrics are something.
It's a good mentality and principle, but I just look back and I can't help but focusing on like, oh, that sounded like shit, or that was good. Like, I struggle with that for sure. Like, I'm too self-conscious, I think, sometimes about just letting it go and letting people interpret it however they will.
I get that way, but to be fair, when everyone sees me for the first time in like 4 years, and this song is just 80s dance beats, cheesy bass, and falsetto. There's certainly an image problem there that is especially because most of these people don't know I make music in
Yeah.
any capacity. So if the first song they hear from you is that, it's not that I feel bad about it. It's just that I think this is weird, and I need to figure out a way to deal with why I can't make normal music. I've figured out I can't make normal music, but I'm trying to cope with that for the brand image.
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
Well, I think that there's nothing wrong with not making normal music. It just has to be, if it's not normal, it still has to be good.
Yeah.
And I think I think your music,
Thank you.
I always really dig it. That's part of the reason why I wanted to do the original collaboration was I checked out some of your stuff and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I think
I'm pretty embarrassed by that stuff from back then.
yeah, well,
No sustain.
I thought you had a lot of good ideas. It was a lot of short 1 minute intro, like it was almost like you were just throwing ideas out there, but not really completing any of
So I
them.
was trying to. That was all about. I want to find the brand. I want to find the image.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many times where I'm like, I'm gonna do this genre. I'm gonna grow my hair long, and I'm gonna play live like this.
yeah,
But as you can see, I don't have any hair, so that was a challenge. And all these concepts I keep throwing at the wall and seeing what do people like, what do people like, and eventually, if people like something, then I have to recreate that. That doesn't seem right.
yeah. Then it seems like that'll just get boring. You're just reinventing yourself over and over again. But I think a lot of artists struggle with that too. Is they don't want to do the same thing, but they have to stay loyal to the brand, and I don't know. It's confusing.
Music, am I right?
Oh man, it's tough. On that note, let's wrap this up, dude. It's good talking to you.
It was good talking to you. It was a great
thanks for
being
doing
here.
this. Check out Knowledge Hub, Alternate History Hub, and Indie Trash.
Indie Trash, the most important of the bunch.
Indie Trash on SoundCloud. And as always, the onlys with an apostrophe S. That apostrophe, that came out of